But the senator, while indoctrinated, could not explain his toxicity.
You should not listen to men's rights advocates if you want to know what they have to say.
Coming to you live from deep within the muddy. What the fuck? That I thought you were fading it off there, Brian.
I did, and then never mind.
Then it came back.
VLC media player has flaws, but
okay, all right, but coming to you live from deep within a muddy but windy and also sometimes technically deficient radioactive meme land. We are the survivors of the alt-right apocalypse, the few, the brave, the bitchy, once more wading into battle against the zombie lobster herds. With Rantzerker number 100. Karen, quit with your clicking. Mute.
Well, that's what stopped it, and I don't know how it's getting into... How is my earbud feed being fed into the...
Okay, wait a second. Stopped what? That the whole fading out the intro music had nothing to do with your...
Okay. I was just trying to close the fucking thing that was running in the...
You know what's really funny is we spend a certain amount of time prior to the show to try to fix all the technical issues, but we always have them anyway.
It's not good, Allison. It's not good.
It's never any good. Anyway, Rantzerker number 100, Me Too in France by Vice News HBO. This is a 6-minute and 35-second video, folks, and as you know from previous Rantzerkers, responding to video of such epic length will take us 4 hours at least. As such, we will do 1 hour of response, followed by an additional gamified hour. That means after the first hour, we keep going as long as there is a super chat featured. As soon as there is no super chat featured, the air horn will sound and we will disappear like the morning dew, or a puff of smoke.
Or the snow plows in Edmonton.
Yeah, as soon as they see snow, they evaporate.
They're gone. They're nowhere to be found. Yeah.
Our after show today will either be a reading from Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules, an Antidote to Chaos, or we'll finish this video should there be anything left to finish on this video. And if you want to join us during the after show, the link is www.patreon.com/honeybadgerradio. Now let's get on with the show. All right. So shall we just, like we've already had the technical difficulties, which seem to be pretty much inevitable. Like, I don't know, I guess the best business model for a radio show was not to put artists in charge of the technology.
Yeah.
Any aspiring radio show producers out there, don't put artists in charge of the audio equipment. I mean, not audio artists might be might be safe, but not visual artists or writers. It doesn't work. It's just a thing. It just won't.
I don't even know half of the shit that you guys do. Like you're on like you're on like OBS and fucking like live streaming to multiple places at once. I can barely figure out how to fucking start a live stream on YouTube. That's probably, it's a good thing that I don't have anything to do other than show up when it comes to putting these shows together. So yeah.
It is. We're learning as we go, but we still have the deficit of being artists.
There you go. All right.
Anyway, all right. Let's do this thing. Okay, so we're going to be covering Vice's take on Me Too in France. I'm sure this is going to be balanced and very informative. I'm looking forward to it. Yep. All right. Let's do it.
Yep. Hitting play right now.
Oh, by the way, this is like not really helping people who are listening because they're just hearing sound. They're essentially saying that France's Me Too movement is growing despite backlash, and then for some reason we're in New York suddenly.
Yeah. Well, because the person who spearheaded the France movement is going to be speaking in New York.
Oh, I see. Okay, all right.
Yes, is
And
what I gather.
I assume what they're referring to as the backlash is some prominent French women have spoken out against Me Too. And of course,
Yeah. 100 French female celebrities and high profile women have essentially signed an open letter saying this is getting a little bit out of hand. So.
what's interesting is that, of course, as soon as women expressed any kind of Karen, could you stop constructing Lego on your desk there?
I'm not constructing Lego. I was just shifting my position. Jesus fuck.
Just like Karen's like creating a
my
Death Star
God.
out of Lego, and while she does this, multitasking, making lots of noise. All right. Yes. Okay. So the Me Too movement in France, it was opposed by a number of prominent women in France, and of course, as soon as they opposed it, somebody had to come out and tell them how they were womaning wrong. They were just not womening correctly. I wonder, considering how these things go, I wonder if the people involved in creating this highly charged atmosphere of female victimhood, I wonder if they're ever worried that the draconian, authoritarian, and extremely aggressive and almost cruel, actually, I would say cruel way that they persecute women who speak out against how they believe women should act. I wonder if they ever consider that in the future that might not be looked too kindly upon. Like we might look back and be like, "Wow, how did we ever justify forcing women into the role of victim and persecuting any woman who spoke out against that?" Just wondering there. Just putting it out there.
Well, I think that honestly, the feminists of the future will find plenty of ways that they can blame their own behavior on men. So there you
Yeah, I
go.
just hope that we get into the
That's all you need.
Yeah, I just hope we don't end up in that same trap, that same psychological trap again. Maybe we just start recognizing that
Women have agency.
yeah, women have agency. What a thought, radical. Oh,
I
wait, it's not
know.
radical. Patriarchy is the one that thinks that women are strong. It's wait.
Well, the thing that's frustrating about the whole agency argument is that that like agency is like whether you think you have agency or whether you feel you have agency is completely immaterial to the question of whether your behavior and your actions can affect yourself and other people. So I mean, like, what I think feminism is focused on is women's perceptions of their own agency. They don't perceive themselves as having agency, and therefore they don't. Whereas women have an incredible amount of agency. Often it's unperceived. Often they are completely unaware of how much of an effect that they can that they can impose on other people, and we're the ones who are essentially saying, actually, yeah, women can destroy other people. Women can, through carelessness or just malice or all kinds of other human motivations, can inflict incredible damage on other people and even on themselves, and we need to recognize that. Now, that has nothing to do with whether a given woman, what she thinks of herself. This is all about women have it, whether they want to have it or not, whether they are going to deny it or not, right? And so I think feminism has the entire agency argument completely fucking ass backwards. The idea that women need agency to be granted to them
By men.
Yeah, no, feminists, you have it wrong. And part of agency, part of the idea of a person having agency is a society that's willing to place constraints on that agency, right?
Mm-hmm.
because it does affect other people. So the whole kind of world of infinite choice that, and all choices must be cost free, otherwise they're not choices, and this, all of these arguments that feminists put out, is essentially a way of making it so society or reality, is unable to impose constraints on women's agency. And at that point, you're essentially begging for women to become a class of people who can act however they want and suffer absolutely no consequences, no matter who they hurt.
Although what's interesting is there seems to be a rising number of women who are interested in this conversation about not just the rights and responsibilities of a citizen, but the responsibilities of just dealing with this power that women have, this power over belonging and this sense of cooperation and in society, and understanding it and understanding the way it's used negatively and how it can be used positively. See, I've gotten a lot of actual interest in what I've said so far about my series Deprogramming Women, even from women that I didn't really expect. So it may be that the future is not quite as bleak.
Well, I mean, the argument that you're making is that women are effectual. And, for, in particular, for women who want to be effectual, who want to feel like they have an impact on the world and all of those things. Um, I mean, you're there telling them, yeah, you already have that, and it's your job and your duty to use it responsibly so that you don't hurt others with it. And I think that that's actually a good message to send to women. And I think it's kind of akin to Jordan Peterson's message, that resonates with young men, is that it firmly situates women within a power that a form of power that they already have access to, and tells them, you have this power, now do something good with it, as opposed to doing something shitty with it without even realizing you're doing it because you think that you don't have that power, right?
Yeah, and I would actually caution any woman who's interested in having her agency recognized. Look what feminists do to feminists from previous generations. Now, those feminists are, of course, part of the patriarchy, and the things they did are part of the patriarchy. So even if feminism says, oh, yeah, through feminism, you'll get your actions recognized as having consequences. As a woman, you'll have a voice that can change things. Bullshit. Within a generation, whatever you've done will be called part of the patriarchy.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
like it's never ending. It's this window where everything that your feminists are currently doing is good, and everything that was done, including by other feminists in the past, is bad and part of patriarchy.
Yeah, and then what the feminists of today will do is they'll say, "Oh, these men's rights activists, they say that feminists, did this, did that, stacked the domestic violence law deck and the policy deck, and stacked the family court deck and family court policy deck, and they did all these horrible things that harm men, and I only wish women had that kind of power, right? Or feminists had that kind of power." And it's like, so what is the very first thing that feminists do when they're called on their abuse of power, the abuse of the power that they have that has harmed others, right? So their own exertion of their agency, right? What's the first thing they do? They deny that they have any agency or power whatsoever. They say, oh, well, we didn't do that. It was actually the men in power who did that, because that's a bad outcome. Everybody now agrees that that's sort of a bad outcome. And so we want to deny having had a hand in any of it. And, oh, sure, we were pushing for it, but really it was ultimately the men in charge of the patriarchy who enacted those changes, and therefore we really had nothing to do with it, because we're just harmless, helpless, powerless little girls, right? Who, and the whole thing is, I mean, I want to ask the listeners, okay? Because I mean, this is something that I was mentioning to my boyfriend the other night. Um, when we were discussing sort of the idea of Lady Macbeth as sort of the quintessential toxic form of toxic femininity, right? And imagine if you sat and watched the play Macbeth, and all of the scenes where Lady Macbeth engages in any conversation whatsoever were removed, right? Anything private that she discussed with her husband, anything she said where there was no one listening, right, other than her husband, and all of that was just gone out of that play. What would your impression be of who was ultimately responsible for the catastrophe that happened at the end of that play? How would you perceive Lady Macbeth if you didn't know all of these things that were only revealed to you because you had access to her private conversations? This power and influence that she was wielding, the fact that she was the one largely calling the shots in the whole thing, all of that was sub rosa. All of that was under the table. All of that was off the record. And because of this, right? And this is why I think Shakespeare, he had women half right, but not fully right, because she wouldn't have offed herself. She wouldn't have killed herself. She would have watched the whole thing play out, given the kind of woman she was, watched the whole thing play out, watched all of those men die. And then on the ruins of the battlefield, among all of the slaughtered, she would have attached herself to the most powerful surviving man and said, her husband, this is all my husband's doing. This is all my husband's fault, right? I was just a helpless, leaf carried in his wake, in the wake of his ambition, right? And please, please, please have mercy on me and protect me, and I'll probably have sex with you. And then she would have probably sat for about 6 months, maybe a year, um, of establishing the relationship with this new man, and then she would have started to manipulate him the way she manipulated Macbeth, and that's how that would have went. And nobody other than the men involved in those private interactions would have any knowledge of the fact that she was a major fucking architect of that whole fucking thing, right? This is an enormous amount of power that if those women want to wield it in that way, results in zero imposition of accountability for it.
And it seems like a lot of feminism seems to go along those routes. And it's like you have to take pains to distinguish feminism, which is an ideology and an explanation of why, quote unquote, there's inequality. Brian, if you're listening to me, could you mute when you're not talking because we're getting some feedback from you? And the women's rights, which is recognizing situations where women are genuinely disenfranchised and trying to do something to assist women. And I would say at this point in time, feminism and women's rights are diametrically opposed. But the idea of Lady Macbeth just being able to absolve herself of any kind of agency and attach herself to the next man who has a strength that she can manipulate into doing her bidding. I mean, that's basically how feminism works. Essentially, it's a very powerful, connected, well-heeled women who want to use this particular threat narrative, this narrative where they get to be damsels, they get to appropriate the issues of people who have been legitimately disenfranchised by the system. They appropriate their issues, use them to create a head of self-righteousness, and then manipulate men with it, the powerful men that are in their class with it. And then
because they do it through lobbying and through policy, so much of it is unaccountable.
yeah,
Like
it just
so much.
disappears. Like Lady Macbeth's responsibility, it just
Yeah.
disappears.
Yeah, policy doesn't get debated in Parliament or on the floor of Congress, right? It isn't exposed to the same kind of public scrutiny that legislation is, right? And therefore, once it's in there, and it can be enacted or implemented via committees of hand-picked individuals, none of them elected, none of them named, who have job security because they're bureaucrats, right? And they are part of that. I don't know if you'd call it the deep state, but part of the government that does not change when power changes hands in terms of elected officials, right? These people are still there in those positions, even after an election, a complete election upset that might shift from like in Canada, a majority conservative government to a majority liberal government. These bureaucrats are still in there, these particular ones, and they're still operating through the same policies and through the same ideologies and in the same ways. So it's super, super easy to sneak into the structure of our systems and our institutions, and it's super, super hard to uproot. It's really, really difficult.
Yep. But what's interesting, I think, just to play off of what you're saying, is I think that interestingly enough, I think gaming is creating a generation of young women who may not be as attracted to this kind of hypo agency or this lack of perception of the consequences of their actions in the greater world. The reason why I say that is because gaming is essentially walking into a fantasy world and a being in a situation where your actions have greater consequences in that world, or you can simulate your actions having greater consequences in that world than you can in the real world. I mean, that's basically a game.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't, like that's what underlies Minecraft. And if you play Minecraft in creative mode, you don't actually engage with any enemies or have really any goal that what you set. But yet Minecraft gives you the ability to have a greater effect on the environment than you could in the real world. So we're potentially raising generations of girls, greater amounts of girls who don't want to necessarily say, "Yeah, you know what? My actions have so little consequence into the world, and tee flash my lashes, and maybe give a little nagging shout, but high pitched and with that affectation that I have never seen any feminist, like almost every feminist I've seen does this. They move like they're a toddler. Like their sense of their body hasn't fully developed like an adult, and then they have the high pitched voice or the vocal fry, and they're in every way they're aping a child, an infant. So they might be a strident infant. Well, infants are often strident. They might be a nagging infant. Well, infants often nag, but they're still infants. They still perceive themselves in terms of crying, nagging, being strident to get someone else to do something for them. And I think there may be generations of girls coming from the gaming world that aren't interested in crying out and being served, but are more interested in the consequences of their actions, because that's what's attracting them to being to a game world. Anyway, that's an aside. We should probably get a few more seconds in.
Yeah, we're at like 14 seconds
14
right
seconds.
now.
Okay, first, I'm going to read a super chat. The Great
Okay.
Indoors 1979 gives us €5 and says, "So, sex sells, and women having no agency also sells. No wonder the 50 Shades of Grey series is such a success, and Ghostbusters 2016 wasn't."
Agreed. Like, well, I don't know. I'm not sure exactly what the downfall of Ghostbusters 2016 was, because I never watched it. I actually didn't mind the trailer. I was like, it actually made me giggle at times. But I'm easily entertained. Uh, and there are very few movies that I find like intolerable and just impossible to watch. Same with TV shows. I'm fine with lots of stuff. But yeah, I think essentially this whole idea of women, Bill Burr put it beautifully, like yeah, then there's a house fire, and that staunch man-hating feminist twists her brush cut into like little pigtails and says, "I'm just a girl, rescue me." Um you know, that seems to be essentially like this is sort of the and feminism is a hydra with many heads, but this is definitely one of their heads, is this negation of even their own ability to get things done. As long as those accomplishments are viewed in a positive light, they're happy to take credit for it, even when that credit is undeserved, such as with the 1918 enfranchisement of the People Act or whatever it was in Britain that they're celebrating this year. Um, and there's a beautiful video online saying two students uh, discuss the vote or something like that, or vote with women's suffrage or something like that. That goes into like, yeah, really, the suffragettes didn't have a whole lot to do with it, and it was mostly men dying in World War One that was the reason why both men and women got universal suffrage, right?
And
Um,
women were originally not given suffrage if they were under the age of 30, not because they wanted to discriminate against women, but because they wanted to balance out the voting population because so many men under 30 had died.
Yeah, but I mean, like one of the biggest slogans in that whole representation of the People Act is what it was if they're fit to fight, they're fit to vote. That was one of the things that would have been chanted at rallies, and it was stated by a specific MP first, and then it was repeated by other MPs during the debates. The debate was that putting men of all classes in the trenches together seems to have completely obliterated any idea that class division between men is something that's legitimate, that there is more that is noble about a man born of the aristocracy than there is about a man born in a working class neighborhood to a working class family. That this idea of class division between men was just it, or that there should be such a thing, was just obliterated by the fact that men of all classes were thrown into the trenches and had to actually exist together in that environment and become a unified uh, fighting force, right? So that was essentially why that act was successful. And one of the hilarious things is, you know, feminists, suffragettes had a majority, women's suffrage had a majority in parliament for years and years and years, decades, perhaps, prior to this particular act being enacted. But it was the bills that were introduced by people like the Pankhursts, suffragettes like the Pankhursts, who wanted £10 suffrage. They wanted suffrage only, they wanted suffrage for women, but only upper class women. Same, they wanted only suffrage for upper class men. And the Liberal and Labor parties understood that adding affluent women to the franchise when only about 50% of men, all of them middle and upper class, had the vote would be political death for their parties because they were representing the working class, right? And so essentially, if you took the affluent and you added rich women's votes to that, it would be a rich person's bloc that could outvote the working class, the few men of middle and modest income who were allowed to vote at that time, right? So it was a class demographic thing that made it so that they had to object to those particular bills as they were presented in Parliament. And it was only when arguably it was only when the franchise was extended to all men, right, that the Liberal and Labor parties were willing to cease objecting to women's suffrage, right? Now we're going to have universal suffrage. It's not going to be the death of our parties. It's not going to be the death of our parties that are less well funded than women's suffrage organizations because we represent the working class who have no fucking money, right?
Wow, and it's amazing that women once again appropriate, or at least politically active, well-heeled, well-connected, wealthy women managed to appropriate the issues of the very people that they ended up depressing. It's just unfucking believable.
Yeah, yeah,
Ugh.
it's absolutely crazy. And if you look at the suffrage in the UK and sort of the shift from what things were like to when Disraeli in 1867 said, God forbid we ever find ourselves living under an actual democracy, right? Like I pray that never happens ever. The government was extremely hostile to the idea of a representative democracy in any way, shape, or form. And the Chartists between 1832 and 1858, I believe, they were the ones who paved the way towards the democratic reforms that actually led to universal suffrage. They were the ones who were shot in their hundreds in their demonstrations and their presenting of petitions with millions of signatures to Parliament demanding universal male suffrage and other electoral reforms like paying MPs. They wanted MPs, the position of MP, Member of Parliament, to be a paid position so that it wouldn't only be, men with inherited wealth who could actually do that job. You could actually have a working class MP or an MP from a modest background who could afford to do that job because he wasn't in the coal mines or he wasn't running his grocery store. These were the reforms that led to all of that. These men were beaten, they were shot. In one of their demonstrations where they presented 2.8 million signatures or something like that to Parliament, only to be told no for the third fucking time. Over 200 of them were shot by 10,000 military soldiers who were on hand, and something like 60,000 armed special constables who were deputized in advance of the event. This was a movement that, and then in the aftermath, with all these dead men lying on the ground, there were prosecutions for treason, there were prosecutions for sedition, there were men who were imprisoned and died in prison, there were men who were sentenced to hang, and there were men who were exiled to Tasmania for participating in what was essentially a peaceful protest and a presentation of a petition with millions of signatures on it demanding voting rights for men. This was in 1858, and we've forgotten that entire history. But the suffragettes were put in prison for fucking lacing letterboxes with acid, throwing a fucking axe at the Prime Minister of England, right? Plotting assassinations and firebombing buildings and train stations, museums, art galleries, train stations.
To answer a question in chat, the suffragettes were definitely feminists. The suffragists were female rights activists. But here's the issue with all of this. Those individuals, those men agitating, being killed, being imprisoned, being persecuted for agitating for their rights to vote, and in a way that women never were. And in fact, suffragettes got away with criminal acts that if they had been men would have gotten hanged. Terroristic, criminal, treasonous acts that if they had been men would have gotten them hanged. And they were a group of wealthy elitists who only wanted to increase the power of the wealthy class over the working class. These are the heroes that came out of this era. These are your heroes, feminists. These women who committed terroristic criminal acts of violence and who only advocated for white, because many of them were racist, white, wealthy women, and only white wealthy women, most likely because they wanted to keep the wealthy classes in power with a voting bloc that kept the lower classes out of power. These are your founding women. Racists who hated the working class. These are the feminist heroes who've been reimagined into something that they're not. But the other thing is,
this is too, like, this going back to the Me Too thing, right? Like Time magazine posts this picture of all of these fucking celebrity women, these extremely rich and powerful women, and says this is the person of the year for this year for Time magazine, is the Me Too hashtag, essentially, right? With all of these extremely privileged, wealthy, fucking powerful women. And it's like, really, we're going through this again, because you know what? When I was sexually harassed on the job, right, it was wealthy, powerful women who were standing in the way of me even getting my unemployment insurance benefits.
It is fucking amazing, because
Yep.
this is really what it comes down to. It's wealthy, powerful women appropriating. And not all women, just wealthy, powerful women. Strangely enough, those women who have to work to survive don't really have the time to oppose this. Wealthy, powerful women appropriating more power for their class and more power over their class. That's all feminism is. That's all it is. It's a corporate and it's the elite in corporations and governments either consolidating their power or enacting power against other groups of people. That's all it is. It's so freaking transparent. And they don't advocate for women at all. They advocate for their own interests, their own political interests. But what I wanted to bring up about the suffrage, universal suffrage, I just wanted to describe something that I read recently about World War One. Just an incident, like, and it was one of many. It's just one where an officer, I don't know, let's call him Rob, was dying of dysentery in a trench. This is the kind of conditions that men had to endure to actually get the vote. He's dying of dysentery in a trench, and the men he had command over actually tried to pull him to the latrine, but they didn't quite make it, and he basically shat himself, shat everywhere. And then because they couldn't hold him up because they were so weak, because they hadn't eaten properly and they were also sick, he rolled into his own feces and drowned. That's the kind of stuff that men haven't had to endure. This is Valentine's Day. This is Valentine's Day. I think it's a great day to bring that kind of stuff up. That's the kind of stuff that men had to endure. Dying of dysentery in a muddy trench where
you're drowning in your own shit.
Drowning in your own shit. That's what men had to endure to get the enfranchisement, to get enfranchised.
Yeah.
And I want the men listening to me to really feel that, really be present in that moment. As a man, 80 years ago, in order to get the right to vote, I had to be willing to drown in my own shit. But what did women have to do?
Well,
Just
they were women, and they threw bombs, and they sent poison, and they threw an axe at the prime minister, and ironically, it hit the Irish minister and took off part of his ear, apparently. And they engaged in political stunts like that woman who wanted to pin a banner to the king's horse as it came around the bend of the racetrack at 40 miles an hour and got trampled to death. That is the one death among the suffragettes that I've been able to find. And it was a publicity stunt gone wrong, absolutely stupid to do. It was essentially Jackass, but with politics. And this is what they did. And the worst that any of them suffered was they were imprisoned for their crimes. When they went on hunger strikes, they were force-fed just like everybody else who went on a hunger strike in prison at that time. And then when public sentiment began to view this as cruel and unusual punishment for such prestigious and upper-class ladies and such gentle souls as women, they were released from prison.
Okay, I'm belaboring this point, but listen to what Karen is saying. And remember, being willing to drown to death in your own shit was the price for universal male suffrage. When any woman comes up to you and says, "We lived in a patriarchy, we were oppressed, Women's right to vote, blah, blah, blah. You don't necessarily, I'm not telling you to say anything back to her. Just look at her and remember that men's right to vote only came about because men were willing to drown to death in their own shit. Women's right to vote was given with no conditions attached. None. None whatsoever.
There you
And
go.
just stay in that moment and look at her with the feelings that come out of you in that moment of
Well, and what
remembering that.
Yeah, no, and if and when that woman says to you, but women had a duty to give birth to, to the next generation of soldiers, right? Men died in the trenches, women died in childbirth, and you can just say, okay, well, when did the government step in and force women using a lottery system? When did the government step in, draw your lot, and tell you, as a woman of childbearing age, a woman between the age of 18 and 25, that your lot has been chosen and you will now be impregnated and forced to give birth? When has that ever fucking happened?
And really, this is like Honey Badger Radio is really about giving you the emotional right to sit in that space and look at women who yap about oppression in the past. And like I said, I'm not saying that you have to say anything, but remember, when you hear a woman talk about that, remember what I've said. Remember what Karen has said. Just think about that.
Yeah,
Think about that.
because the closest thing that you can get to the argument that women were forced to have children or whatever is that when women entered into a government authorized contract with a man, wherein the man was required to support her financially, um, as part of that bargain, she was also required to provide him with children, right? That is the closest that you can get. If that woman was willing to enter into that contract, it was a contract that had an obligation on her part. But the government has never actually stepped in and forced women to get married, ever. In fact, the government has come closer to forcing men to get married through bachelor taxes and stuff like that.
All right, let's do another 20 seconds. We threatened this like a half hour ago.
Well, I got two
I
more
think this might.
super
Okay,
chats.
go ahead. I think this might be a record for us. We're almost like an hour in, and we've only done 14 seconds. Oh, Vice.
They haven't even said anything on here yet.
I know, it's just Vice. Like, Vice is just awful. Like, they're wrong, even in their music. I mean, I don't know how that's even possible, but it's true. I mean,
No,
me and
no.
Mike went through that.
Yeah, they
Vice,
do that.
they fuck around with the music. They lie with music. It's fucking amazing.
Set the
Lice
tone with
is
tone.
amazing.
Okay, so Observing Libertarian gives us $10 and says, rights don't exist in a democracy. Everyone is sacrificed on the altar of the greater good. Democracy is two wolves and a sheep voting on what's.
Well, but that's why we have things like the Bill of Rights and human rights codes and constitutions, and stuff like that. And they are variously good and bad. I mean, like, there are certain documents of that sort that are not great. Our Charter of Rights and Freedoms in Canada is not great in certain ways, but that's why you have those constitutions, to limit the power of the majority to oppress the minority. So, yeah.
Also, to be clear, the United States is not a democracy, despite everybody saying. So many people saying
Yes,
it is.
it's a constitutional republic or some shit.
Yeah, constitutional republic.
Yeah, but you still have democratic processes. And
Yeah, we do.
Same with the UK, even before they became what could be viewed as a democracy, even when only 3% of property, 3% of men and women, those who had enough property, were able to vote back in 1832 or whatever. You still had something of a democratic process going on.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, it's
yeah.
basically like a bit of. In the U.S., it's a it's a democratic process insofar that, you know, we count votes to figure out who gets elected, but we have systems in place, which is the Republican, I guess, or the Republic part of it, that prevents the majority from smashing the minority. It protects the minority, essentially. Observing Libertarian gives us $5 more and says, men are the slave class, women are the leisure class. It's been that way for a very long time. Cultural narratives and propaganda portray otherwise.
Well, I think honestly, the idea that women were a leisure class, I think that's probably true in the case of a brief period of time in which women of the upper class spent most of their time on pursuits that we would look at as sort of Paris Hilton-y, trivial kind of, or they spent their time being Paris Hiltons and Kardashians. But at the same time, I think that their families pressed them into that role because that role did actually have a certain value in terms of increasing the social status of the entire family. And prior to that brief period of time, I mean, and outside of that particular class of women, like women were doing things. Like my grandmother was not lounging around eating bonbons all day. She was cooking freaking breakfast, cooking a pot roast for lunch, managing a post office and general store, getting dinner on the table, right? Getting a foot bath of Epsom salts and warm water for my grandfather when he got home from either walking a rural mail route in freaking winter just outside of Edmonton or all day, or paving roads all day in the summer, right? I mean, like, it's not like she was sitting around, and then she was growing a vegetable garden and canning vegetables and making pickles and making pies and all kinds of stuff. Like she was always doing something. My mom too, always doing something. I'm much lazier than both of them in a variety of ways. And so it's not like women were just doing nothing or contributing nothing. I mean, women worked too, maybe not outside the home and maybe in different ways doing different things, but prior to all of these wonderful luxuries that were able to be purchased on the backs of male innovation and capitalism and all of these things that improved women's lives and reduced their working day in the home from 14 hours to maybe like 2 or 3. Women weren't just sitting around doing nothing, being a leisure class, other than a specific category of a specific class of women. So
Okay, let's get on to the next 20 seconds.
Let's do it.
Let's try to get to 24 seconds here, or
Okay.
34.
You may or may not know that she is the founder of Balance Ton Porc, which is essentially the Me Too movement in France. And she is here with us. I just want to thank her for being here today and for being extremely brave.
After the Harvey Weinstein news broke last October, French journalist Sandra Muller publicly identified...
Stop, Brian, stop. Okay.
Also, number 1, Brian, it's been 20 seconds. Number 2, Brian, it's echoing through your headphones or something.
Yeah, so the sound from my PC plays through on your audio, so you guys can actually mute.
I was muted.
The side tube. No.
Okay,
you
mute side tube,
You
Karen.
can mute side tube
All
on
right.
your end because you can just listen to the audio coming out over here.
Oh, okay. All right.
All right, I had to get you to stop there, Brian, because
I know it's at 24 seconds.
Will jump us on 20 seconds.
No, yeah, I got it.
Okay.
Okay, so basically the French version of Me Too is called Balance Ton Porc, which means essentially name your pig, or expose your pig. So that's lovely. Because men are pigs.
Men are pigs, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So there you go.
Of course, there's Minth, the cool dude, says, so there's no problem in Hollywood. Well, there's no problem that due process wouldn't solve.
Well, you know, like honestly, and one of the things actually, Jordan Peterson, because I went to go see him on Sunday night. He was speaking in Edmonton, and one of the things that he brought up in the question and answer period, because somebody asked a question pertaining to, you know, there was this young woman who had been, she'd been groomed and raped by some sex traffickers, and the humiliation of having that happen to her was so great that she didn't disclose it to anybody, and actually allowed herself to be trafficked because that was preferable, in at least in terms of, you know, her immediate psychological response. It was preferable to be trafficked as a prostitute than it was to actually tell her parents that she'd been violated in this way. And you know, of course, Jordan is, you know, like, well, that's a really horrible thing, and it's really, sexual assault is among them, you know, the most horrible and humiliating things that can happen to somebody, and that's horrible. But and then he said, but you know, we know things about sexual predators now that we didn't necessarily know, you know, 50 years ago. We know that they're recidivists. We know that this is a pattern of behavior. We know that the vast majority of men don't engage in this, and the men who do it over and over and over again. And that girl, should she not feel some kind of responsibility toward this person or group's future victims? Should she not feel some responsibility to disclose what happened to her? Right? And that's where this whole Me Too thing, particularly in, you know, as it regards Weinstein, right? None of these women who, you know, like, who, I guess they participated in the Whisper Network, right, to sort of warn away other women, newbies to Hollywood and stuff, right? You know, people like what's her name, Kurt Cobain's ex-wife or former wife, and Angelina Jolie, and what's her name, the chick from Shakespeare in Love, the scrawny one, who played Pepper Potts in the Iron Man movie. But you know, like, all of these women,
It's
Rose
Gwyneth
McGowan,
Paltrow.
right, who just signed their NDAs and got their money, or maybe didn't, but just kept it mum, kept it all under the table, right? Didn't go to the authorities, didn't disclose publicly, right? Did not scream what had happened from the fucking rooftops, right? What were they doing? They were saying, I would rather see 30 more women go through this than actually possibly sacrifice my career.
Yep.
Yeah. So much for solidarity, Me Too.
Yeah, actually somebody in the comments said, so you think that, you know, they went through the court system and it didn't? Yeah, because they settled.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. That's the thing. And, you know, honestly, yes, someone as powerful as Weinstein could have a DA in his pocket or two, right? And yeah, it might be really, really, really difficult, right, to come out and say, yeah, this guy is a scumbag. This guy preys on women, right? Rose McGowan, she said that she took off her clothes and got in a hot tub with him, and then and that was consensual. And then what happened next made her regret making that decision, right? Fair enough. Fair enough. Even if you get into your bra and panties and get into a hot tub with a big Hollywood producer, that's not necessarily consenting to whatever he might choose to do to you while you're in that hot tub. Fine. Fine. Perfectly above board, right? But the fact that you settled, you took your fucking money and shut your mouth, and left all of those future women, every single woman who entered his hotel room, after that, you left them fucking twisting in the wind. You felt no responsibility, no civic responsibility to actually come forward in a place where, you know, in a circumstance where this would all become a part of the public record, which is, I will add, why Allison has essentially said, and Allison, when she was negotiating the possibility of a settlement with Calgary Expo and the Mary Sue, one of the very first things she fucking said is, I'm not signing an NDA, period. Not gonna do it. Right? Pertaining to anything. It will all be a matter of the public record. Because that is the only thing that's gonna stop this. Right? You know, like paying some fucking Rose McGowan bitch $100,000, right? And getting her to sign some kind of broad gag order that doesn't even allow her to discuss these matters with her husband or her fucking therapist, which in some cases that's how broad these non-disclosure agreements were with Weinstein, right? How is that helping anyone? Right? $100,000, that's fucking...
It's helping Rose. It's helping Rose.
But that's chump change for a guy like Weinstein. It's just the cost of getting laid. He's probably paid hookers more than that.
Well, I guess that was what she wanted to take. And must have not. That's the thing. Like, women don't seem to recognize. I'm not saying all women, obviously, because I am a woman. That a woman who doesn't care about her responsibility to men often doesn't care about her responsibility to other women. And what's really interesting about this, I know I say that a lot, I used to have a friend a while back who was very much a feminist, and she used to excuse her man hatred by saying, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna bitch about men because I'm a feminist." So feminists when you say feminism isn't synonymous with man hatred, maybe you should stop those women saying that I get to bitch about men because I'm a feminist. Anyway, she said that she wanted to be my friend because I apparently was confident, and also because I didn't backstab. I'm not a backstabber. I haven't done that because I have a sense of responsibility. And I don't just have a sense of responsibility to men, I have a sense of responsibility to the women that I work with, and the women that I'm friends with. I don't talk shit behind their back. Or if I do, I would talk the same shit that I would to their face.
Yeah.
By the way, you're smelly, Karen.
I know. Giant, smelly, gaping hole. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So when you are, even women listening to this, we're like, well, what are these women about? When you expect responsibility for women towards men, you are also creating women who will take responsibility for other women like good citizens should, and don't take settlements in situations where the people they're settling with will go on and harm another woman or another man. If you don't want women to be held to a standard of responsibility, you're creating women who will throw other women under the bus, who will backstab other women. And that's what I see coming out of feminism. Anyway, let's get another 20 seconds in.
All right.
Okay, we have another super chat though first. Observing Libertarian gives us $5 and says, to say nothing of the Ashley Judds of the Me Too movement, Judd capitulated to the fact that she willfully of her own volition had sex with Weinstein. Thank you.
Yeah, no, what's infuriating about so much of this and is that the argument or the issue, the topic, right, is complicated because what you have is the difference between voluntary prostitution and sex trafficking, right? And it's the voluntary prostitutes who set the pattern where a guy like Weinstein is essentially, because the voluntary prostitutes are willing to trade sex for favors, a guy like Weinstein will say, well, therefore I'm not going to give you favors or whatever without the sex, right? And so it's a huge complex of voluntary and involuntary behavior that and it's just way fucking, like, how can you even fucking have a hashtag? I literally did an interview with Huffington Post via email that over the Weinstein and Me Too thing, that when I reproduced it in a blog post, I just copied and pasted it out of my email. It turned into like 5,000 fucking words. It was a 5,000 word long blog post regarding my thoughts on this. How can you fucking deal with that in a hashtag movement, in a, because there's so many fucking ways, there's so many aspects of this that you can look at, and there are so many different ways that you can look at them, right? And
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, because I know this is gonna. So Myth, the cool dude there, says their job is in danger. You're asking a lot. Okay. Prior to going to the Calgary Expo, my greatest source of income was going to these events and all of the hoopla around these events. I risked my income in order to advocate for these issues because I didn't want to live in a world where these issues had to be silenced. Don't give me that shit.
Yeah, no, the whole idea of losing your job, okay? You know, like, honestly...
New one.
No, well, it's not even get a new one. It's you know, yes, there is fear involved. I spent a long time, right, thinking very hard about coming out under my real name. And yeah, I made sure that my bosses knew, right, what I do. And so if they were suddenly receiving a whole bunch of phone calls saying you have a misogynist rape apologist on your staff, you should fire them, that they would realize that, you know, the reason you're getting these calls is because I do this online, right? But, you know, like, taking responsibility sometimes comes with a cost.
It always comes with a cost. It never doesn't come with a cost. And incidentally, Myth, the cool dude, why are you such a misogynist?
Well, I mean, like, look at James Damore. He spoke his mind. He spoke what he told the truth, or at least he didn't lie, in the words of Jordan Peterson. He picked up a burden. He took it onto his shoulders and he stumbled forward with it, right? And this is one of the things that is so beautiful about Jordan Peterson's work, like his actual prescription, I guess, right? Is pick up a burden, put it on your shoulders, stumble forward with it, you know, take on the world, tell the truth, or at least don't lie. All of these things. Stand up straight with your shoulders back, which I can't because I have a broken back, but whatever, okay? But do this, and this is how you find meaning. And you wonder why all of these fucking bitches who succumb to Weinstein's sweaty, puffy-faced advances, right, whether voluntarily or not, feel bad about themselves. So bad about themselves, they need an entire movement to cushion themselves against their own so that they don't have to look themselves in the mirror. They do not. This is why they're doing it. This is why, this Me Too thing. I want to fully embrace this thing so I don't have to fucking look at what I did, right? Which was either I voluntarily slept with that sweaty freaking slime ball for my own personal gain, or he raped me, right? And then I just took the money and shut my mouth and sent other women, right, to the fucking slaughter. That's what I did, and I don't want to look at that. I don't want to look at my part in it. I don't want to look at how my actions affect other people. So I'm going to embrace this Me Too movement. I'm going to go on the cover of Time magazine, and then I don't have to see any of that, right? And it's absolutely disgusting.
It's taking responsibility always comes at a sacrifice. But Peterson is right. It gives your life meaning. And I can't fucking believe that I watched Ashley Judd strut across a fucking stage and start yammering about how she's doing shit for women when she did this. What a craven, piss-stained coward. What
I
a
know.
craven, piss-stained coward. The biggest thing you could have done for women, Miss Judd, is to stand on your principles and not take a settlement and not agree to fuck this slime ball, to nail him to the fucking wall in court. That's what you could have done for women, and you didn't. Therefore, you have no right to say that you advocate for any woman anywhere. In fact, I would say that I do more than you do, because I advocate for women. I have stood by my principles for free speech for everyone, including those women who get silenced in the movements that I'm part of.
Well,
I am
think
standing more for women than you are.
I think honestly, well, she couldn't take him to task in court because she voluntarily had sex with him in return for what he could do for her career, right? Okay, well, that's fine. That's a bargain you struck, right? And you don't get to whine about it now, right? Because it was voluntary. And if you are going to fucking, whine about it, take ownership of your part in constructing a system where men in power can expect sexual favors in return for, promoting your career or giving you a job, right?
Yeah.
Because you are one of the parties that helped set up that system.
Yeah. If you don't like the system, don't allow men like Weinstein to hold carrots over your head and agree to sex. Just walk the fuck away. Hold your principles. And he wouldn't be able to do that.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that if you're going to insist this is a gendered issue, then you're partially responsible for creating a situation where men believe that they can get sex through power. Own it and end it. And the only way it's going to be ended is if you own it. And I don't agree that it is just a purely gender issue. I think women also do this too. Women who are in power expect sexual favors from the people. Not all women in power, but some women in power expect sexual favors. I've even seen a while back, I remember this article on this female CEO who was so sexually aggressive and insensitive at a party in public that she caused one of the men who was her subordinate, to cry. And because she was putting her hands all over him, down his pants, touching, and he was obviously not interested in it or wanting her to stop, and she didn't. And she's a CEO, and the whole article and the entire event was published in a freaking national newspaper, and people were applauding how liberated and powerful she was. The difference is that she's not going to give him a damn thing for being groped by her.
Well, what I found hilarious is one of the senators or congresswomen or whatever who is responsible for sort of bringing the Me Too
we've covered
thing to the government of the the government of the U.S., the legislative floors of the U.S. Did the exact same fucking thing to a guy at a baseball game, or a softball game or whatever.
All right,
it's not a gendered issue, and it is an issue of abuse of power, but you have to realize that one of the things that Jordan Peterson talks about, and yes, I feel like I'm fangirling a little bit in terms of bringing him up, but he says that you have this situation where you put two juvenile rats together, one is 10% bigger than the other. He's going to win when they play wrestle. The bigger rat is going to pin the smaller rat, and that happens. And then from that point on, the smaller rat is the one who has to initiate play. He has to go up and put his bum up in the air and his head down and invite the big rat to play, right? That is the position, that is the etiquette when when the pecking order has been established and one rat is obviously dominant and the other is subordinate. But through the iterations of several times of these two rats playing, if the big rat doesn't let the little rat win at least 30% of the time, the small rat stops inviting him to play. And this is really the thing. The small rat is exercising his agency, right? He's saying, you know what? I don't like this hierarchy you've created, so I'm going to go somewhere else. I'm going to, and then the big rat ends up sitting as a bully alone at the very top of a hierarchy of one, because nobody cares about him. Nobody cares about his dominance because he's not fair, right? And that doesn't happen unless the smaller rats walk away, unless they unless they refuse to play, right? And what these women all did was they either played, right, or let themselves be played, or when they were played and they were like, I don't want to play anymore, what did they do? They allowed the hierarchy to remain as it was, with all of those same rules.
All right. Okay,
Moving
so
on.
essentially this is it's now we're now in the second hour, so it's the super chat hour, but let's do another 20 seconds
Okay.
and see what happens.
All right, I lowered the volume on the video because some people were saying that the video is coming in loud. So you guys will still be able to hear this, just use the audio from my end.
Identified on Twitter the man she said sexually harassed her.
You can't say I like women with big breasts. You're absolutely like a product, like a piece of meat. Honestly, I'm not a piece of meat. I have a brain.
Muller asked other women to out their own harassers, using the hashtag
pigs.
#BalancedOnPork.
So do pigs. So do pigs have a brain.
Oh, I see what you did there.
I'm just saying. You know, and we eat those, so I'm just saying, like, men aren't allowed to like your breasts because you have a brain? God, I'm gonna feel guilty eating bacon.
Okay, so this is so she made this accusation on Twitter, and we all believe her, of course. So what happened to the guy that she made the accusation against? Do we find out what happens to him? Let's go another 20 seconds in. I think we've
a little
spaced
bit.
it out. Yeah.
Or expose your pig.
Why was it so important for you to actually name the names?
I thought Anonymous was too easy, you know, because you can write a lot of story, and if you don't identify yourself, and if you don't identify the guy, I think it could be dangerous, you know.
Why?
Okay, stop it. I'm gonna look at this. I'm gonna look at this. What's going on here? And I'm gonna wait for a super chat to get in. And if it comes in,
Well, there is
while
one.
I'm looking for this.
Although it came
Oh,
in a
there
little
is-
while ago. Yeah. Observing Libertarian gave us $2 and said, in regards to Judd, what principles? This was in response to something you said earlier. And then he gave us another $10. Thank you, sir. And writes, Judd slept with Weinstein for power, fame, and money. Now she's strutting about advocating for women again for power, fame, and money. She can only wonder how many others are identical to her. Many, I wager. And then just now, Omega Blue Fire gave us $5. Thank you, Omega Blue Fire. And writes, hashtag #MeTooMovement. Is there any better reason for men to hashtag just get a doll?
Well, I would say that a doll probably isn't going to give you everything that another human being could give you, but
yeah. Also, we talked about this on yesterday's Polecatcast, and somebody asked, you know, like if sex dolls become really popular, will that change women's perceptions? Like, will they change their behavior to sort of, you know, try to pull men away from sex dolls? And what Hannah and I believe would happen is they would try to get sex dolls banned.
They're already trying. They're already trying to do it. They're already essentially saying
if
that
they can't shame men into
real
obedience,
dolls,
then they're just
real
gonna get
dolls,
rid of them.
and sex dolls for men, and realistic sort of digital, artificially intelligent sex dolls are well. It's having sex with an artificial intelligence is rape, and also it demeans women as a group and objectifies them and all kinds of other nonsense. So I mean, they're really pushing hard against this whole thing about, and I find it just absolutely bizarre because when you think about objectification, the men seem to be wanting something that is as close to a whole human being as possible. You know, an actual human-like doll with an intelligence. That's what men appear to be wanting, right? Whereas women just want a dildo with a vibrator in it.
Yep.
And that's not objectifying men. So.
Right. No, of course not. Okay, ready for some more? Oh, Michael Keller gave us $2 CHF. I'm not sure what that is, and says 5 more minutes, please. Winky face. Thank you, Michael Keller.
I actually found some more information. Apparently, the guy who she alleged sexually harassed her is suing her. They weren't in a work relationship when he doesn't contest that he said that to her, but they weren't actually in a work relationship. They were just at a conference. And so he's alleging that was not harassment because he only said it once, first of all.
Oh, there you go. True. Yeah, it's not harassment.
And he's also saying that as a result of her allegation, he has no ability to find work anymore. There was no work relationship between my client and Eric at the time, but since they were at a work event when everything happened, it can still be considered sexual harassment in the workplace. Really? So essentially what happened is they were at a cocktail party, and apparently they were having drinks, and he paid a pass at her at a cocktail party at a work event. And now they're alleging that this is sexual harassment because it was a cocktail party at like a convention, even though they had no work relationship.
This is getting to be like really, really, really gross, you know, and I just have to say, you know, like, because some of the things that I say in the context of an event could be construed as, you know,
sexual harassment,
or
well,
not sexual well, I guess maybe, but inappropriate or whatever, right? Like, I mean, like, and what frustrates me is that I say those things because I know I can get away with them. Right? I know I can. As a woman, I know I can get away with them. And I know that they won't be taken the wrong way. I mean, Brian was the one who told me ages ago, you do friendly angry really well. You know, so I'll tell people to go fuck themselves or go lick my butthole or whatever, and they just laugh because they know I'm just joking, right? But I mean, all of those things could be considered to be harassing and bullying and all of that stuff if they were taken the wrong way. And it's like, so I'm just blown away by this. I mean, they want to place such constraints on human behavior that.
Yeah. I'm curious if Sandra Muller, Brian, mute because I can hear I'm curious that if Sandra Muller actually has ever expressed any interest in a man or woman at any kind of work event ever. Because
like the whole thing is
that person might want to consider coming forward.
Yeah, no, the whole thing is so complicated by the reality that, you know, at least a large minority, if not a majority of long-term relationships begin at work, between colleagues and coworkers and associates and sometimes between a manager and one of their underlings. It's just, that's how things happen. Work is such a huge part of our lives that, like, I met my ex at work. That's how I met him. He was first cook night shift. I was first cook day shift. Our shifts overlapped by 2 hours. We were essentially, we had the same rank, but because he was night shift, that's more prestigious. So he was a little higher up in the pecking order than I was. And that's how we met. And that was the start of our relationship, was flirting with each other at work. And everything that he said to me, everything that he did to me, everything that, every conversation that we had in the build up toward our first date would be able to be categorized as sexual harassment.
All I can say is if you're a man or woman out there who has had this individual, what's her name, Sandra Muller, if she's ever come up to you in a work-related event and expressed any kind of sexual interest in you, I'm telling you now, particularly if you're a man or actually a woman,
or even asked you questions about your personal life.
Yeah, I guess that could
because
be
that's
considered
inappropriate.
All right, because the thing is, the individual man who was sexually harassed, actually there are two men who came forward about Christina Garcia, who was a founder of Me Too in the US. The man who initially came forward said, well, he didn't even come forward. It was someone who came forward on his behalf who overheard him talking about the incident. But what he said about the incident is that he didn't realize it was sexual harassment, because none of the literature he had ever seen in regards to sexual harassment, or in his case, it was actual sexual assault, he never actually had a female perpetrator and a male victim, so he couldn't conceptualize it in his brain. So if you are a person who has been subject to any kind of inappropriate statements by, what is it, Sandra Muller?
Yeah,
Sandra Muller. And inappropriate statements.
Even if she's ever so much as made a pass at you or commented on your appearance in any way.
Yeah, if you have ever been in a workplace environment with Sandra Muller and she has complimented your hair, complimented your physical appearance, including women as well. So nice butt, nice shoulders, nice suit. If she's in any way insinuated she wanted to have a relationship with you.
You fill out that suit remarkably well. That would be
Yeah, any kind of compliment on your personal appearance or interest in your personal life. For example, do you have a boyfriend or a girlfriend? Any kind of questions like these in the workplace environment. I'm explaining to you now that constitutes sexual harassment.
According to her.
According to her. And, and let's take it a notch further, because let's face it, for men, it's difficult to conceptualize these things. If Sandra Muller has ever put her hands on your person without you wanting them to be there, that is not just sexual harassment, it is sexual assault. If you've seen her try to get another individual drunk so that she can get them sexually in a compromising position, that is not just sexual harassment and sexual assault, that is attempted rape. I'm telling you. So if at any workplace cocktail parties, Sandra Muller ever plied a young man or a young woman, or a man or a woman, with alcohol, if she ever purchased alcohol for them, that's obviously attempted rape. So I'm just giving you the way to conceptualize these issues, and feel free to come forward.
I think it's actually the least you could do.
Yeah, at this point.
And even if you and here's the thing, right? Because even if you think that a lot of this stuff is trivial and it's gone too far and that people shouldn't be policed for this kind of behavior, it will only be when women begin being bit in the ass over behaving in the exact same ways that men do. It's only when women actually get dragged across the coals, get freaking run up a gibbet over these things. It's only when that happens that people will stop, take a look around, and go, oh, how did all these piles of bodies get here? We were just having a witch hunt, and we didn't realize that we were taking things too far. It's only when women start getting taken down that anybody's gonna fucking care.
Well, they already do care with Christina Garcia. They care to give her actual due process, because she was campaigning to get men removed from their jobs based on multiple accusations. Now she's been subject to multiple accusations, but suddenly leave
due process is important.
leave with pay. That without pay. That's that. Well, I'm going to leave without pay while the investigation continues. Okay, all right.
Yeah. Oh, what?
That's
There's
some double standards there.
There's gonna be an investigation. What the fuck? You mean we're gonna allow this predator to keep preying on people?
Yeah, she's in a situation, and actually, in this instance, it probably would be not necessarily to fire her, but not actually. It might not be a good idea to continue to employ someone who has access to vulnerable people in the situation, because she's advocating for victims of sexual assault, and she is charged with sexual assault or allegations of sexual assault against her. You might want to reconsider having her continue on that career path. I mean, even if we don't want to make any judgments based on an allegation, in this instance, you might want to say, yeah, you need a different career path, lady. 1 allegation, 2 allegations of you being a sexual assaulter means you should not have access to people who are vulnerable and who have been subject to sexual assault. Now, you can continue to have a career, but maybe not that one. I'm just saying, this is a different instance entirely.
Yeah.
And I agree. Some people might not agree with me. I'm a little bit more of a hardliner, you know.
Well, I mean, I'm in favor of due process. Unfortunately, due process for women who have been accused of sexually assaulting or sexually harassing men generally doesn't really amount to much in the way of, even when they're convicted, it's like, oh, you got a suspended sentence. It's fine, right?
So sorry to interrupt.
No, so it's like, you know, but I think that, like, I honestly think that if there were more innocent women who were dragged down in these situations, then we'd maybe be able to get a handle on it, and
it doesn't even have to be innocent women. I actually wouldn't want that necessarily.
Well, I wouldn't want it either, but I mean, like, we would be able to actually get some sanity.
Yeah, we would be able to, but I actually think that even guilty women would probably get more sanity into the process.
Of course.
Judging from the evidence I've seen in Crystal Garcia's case, she's as guilty as a dog in the cat box eating cat shit.
Wait,
that's my
ew.
I don't think her name is Crystal Garcia. We know a Crystal Garcia.
Oh shit! Sorry, not Crystal Garcia. Christina Garcia.
Christina Garcia.
My apologies.
No,
Crystal Garcia is a lovely woman.
Yes, and totally innocent of any crimes.
And totally
that we know
innocent of any crimes. Yeah, I'm talking about Christina Garcia. Judging from what I've heard, she's guilty. Because the thing is that there was no motive for this guy to make any kind of accusation. In fact, he didn't make an accusation. He simply expressed, like, he was in shock after the incident and simply described it to another individual who was the individual who brought forward the accusation. So he isn't even motivated by a desire to make a false accusation, because he didn't even make the accusation. He just, at the time it happened, was just in shock and just described it to another human being. So, I mean, that makes him very credible, in my opinion. And then we have an additional accuser, so it's a second accuser who has exactly the same story. That might not necessarily make him more credible, but it is a situation where we have multiple accusers, which Christina Garcia herself has said should result in a resignation. Anyway, and possible also social sanction.
So, should we do some super chats and then another 20 seconds?
We have a huge super chat, and this one came in. This one came in just as I was like, no super chats. I'm going to end this and I'm going to rest my back. And
there's a couple in the other YouTube channel too. There's two of them there, and there's the big one. So,
shall we start with the big one?
Well, let's do the big one last, because it's probably the one that'll spark the most conversation. These other ones are kind of short and sweet. Observing libertarian. Yes. What, Allison? You're gonna what?
I'm gonna go take a brief break, just to do things.
Observing libertarian gives us $2 again and says, true fact, the first vibrator was steam powered. Thank you for that. And Omega Blue Fire gives us another $5 and says, all I want is a family, but feminist junk like #MeToo has destroyed the social contract. Well, yeah, I mean, it's pretty much been eroding for a long time.
Oh, the social contract was gone a long time
Yeah.
ago. The social contract between men and women has been completely obliterated for quite a while. It's just that people are starting to notice it now.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess that's not a terrible thing that we're seeing it and that we know about it.
Well, but it's gotten so bad we can't
It's like
avoid looking at it now. Is
Yeah.
really the thing. Like things have to get so bad that there's no avoiding acknowledging them, right?
Yep. And then the big super chat. So this one comes from Natufian Grain Harvest, who gives us $200.
Holy shit!
Yeah, thanks so much, man. That's very, very generous. And he writes, "Sorry if this was already covered, but what do you think will happen to the #MeToo movement if/when men start coming forward and accusing women?"
They already have, and they've been summarily pushed out.
Yeah, it's basically been, I would say, minimized to focus on the women. It's even like they've already done this within Hollywood itself. Like the Me Too thing started in Hollywood, right? And then everyone had their eyeballs on Hollywood, and they were like, how far down does this rabbit hole go? How bad are things in Hollywood? How much does this, happen? And then we started not only to look at, the women that had come forward, but then people were looking at the men, and some guys that had been speaking out before, like Corey Feldman, for example, have, used
and
this
that dude who plays Jon
opportunity.
Snow.
Yeah.
Right.
And
just in terms
guy.
of men are sexually objectified
Right.
too.
And the kids from Stranger Things, and there were other men, Terry Crews, but even then there was a shift in narrative to focus on the women with the way that they addressed the issues in, say, at the awards shows where they had the women all wore black, and they had the other hashtag, I forget what it was called, something like time to stop.
Time's up.
Time's up. Yeah, that's it. Time to stop. It's time to stop. And so all of a sudden, it was like the people forgot that there were a lot of men that were dealing with this shit too, and it became focused on the women.
I don't even think that it's like people forgot. People just don't want to. They see Corey Feldman as derailing the real conversation that needs to be had, which is about the victimization of women at the hands of men. And that's the entirety of their freaking narrative. That's the entirety of their worldview. And anything that deviates from that is seen as taking away from it. And so it's not just about minimizing it or whatever. I mean, like, you even see that when Feldman was on with Barbara Walters, she actually got angry with him for talking about child sexual abuse in Hollywood and sort of the casting couch for boys that existed, that he began speaking about in the 90s, for fuck's sake. But she looked at him actually angry and said, "But you're destroying an entire industry," right? And it's like, it's almost like an affront. Like it's like, how dare you? How dare you speak about this, right? And how dare you minimalize the experiences of women at the hands of these evil, evil, evil men by saying, yeah, I was also sexually abused by a man, or heaven forbid, by a woman. How dare you? How dare you water down the conversation? How dare you take it off of the rails? How dare you make the conversation, or attempt to make the conversation, ineffective? So, I mean, I think that it's really, male victims are not going to be welcome no matter what. And in particular, they're not going to be welcome if their perpetrators are women within this movement.
Can I just ask you a question for clarification, Karen? What industry did she say that he was destroying?
Hollywood.
Okay, so because he's talking about the abuse of men and boys in Hollywood, he's destroying it. Therefore, we have to hold the institution of Hollywood more important than the concerns of survivors. Well,
That's
Yes.
correct.
Okay, all right. I'm just going to point something out to everybody listening. Do you realize that's why institutions are primarily staffed by men? Because we put the continued life of the institution as more important than the life of the individual men who comprise it. If you want women to be in the majority of anything, you are going to have to change it. So we put the life, the well-being of the institution that they're part of higher than their well-being. Otherwise, what will happen is they will get into an institution and they will progress, their well-being will be prioritized over the continued maintenance of that institution, which will require sacrifice on the part of the women in it to maintain. But since their well-being is more important, what will happen? We will destroy the institution. So this is actually what she said is a microcosm of why the Western civilization, and probably all civilizations at this point, is going to die. And we are all going to be basically back in a pre-verbal Stone Age society, because we're allowing groups of people whose benefit we hold greater than any of the social institutions that we rely on into those social institutions, and then we hold their benefit greater, and we deconstruct those institutions to sacrifice for women's benefit, rather than women going in and sacrificing for the benefit of the institution, which is required for the institution to continue to exist. That's why men have always staffed institutions that were required by society to exist for society to continue. Here's the great question. We cannot allow women's full participation in these institutions if we are going to hold their welfare over the institutions that we rely on for everybody's welfare. We can't do it. If we do it, we are heralding in the end of our civilization. And it's simple mechanics. It's simple, unavoidable systems mechanics. Does anybody understand me?
Yes.
And so we're now at the point where we either solve the issue of holding women's benefit above the benefit of the social systems that we all rely on and all derive benefit from. So even though an individual woman may be expected to sacrifice a little bit, for example, calling out a predator like Harry Weinstein, overall, women will benefit from that system of calling out predators like Harry Weinstein. If we're going to insist on not expecting women to put their own benefit as secondary to the benefit of the institutions that they serve, those institutions will die. So kiss the government goodbye, kiss Hollywood goodbye, kiss the media goodbye, kiss the petrodollar goodbye, kiss academia goodbye, kiss bureaucracy goodbye, every single conceivable institution that women are a part of and we hold their benefit over, kiss goodbye, kiss language goodbye, kiss reciprocal altruism goodbye, goodbye, kiss your grocery goodbye. It's going to be gone. Everything is going to be gone. And we are going to be what remains of us. In fact, the pinnacle of human civilization will be the pygmies in Africa or the Amazon tribes after all of this shit is done. That's what's going to remain of us. And Western civilization will be a gigantic black smoking crater. Thank you, Brian. And people have said that I am bitter and apathetic, and I'm not. I like I said on my most recent video, I went to bed when I was 12 not knowing if I would survive the next day because we were being bombed. The fact of Western civilization dying doesn't matter ultimately, because you have to continue to get shit done, even in the face of potential death. So I'm going to figure out what could possibly prevent Western civilization from imploding, which is advocating for the notion of holding women to a standard of responsibility and expecting them to sacrifice for the benefit of others. So that woman, Rose, whatever the fuck her name is, yeah, you take the potential job loss to take out a predator like Harry Weinstein. You do that. Ashley Judd, don't actually take the carrot. Laugh in his face and say, you know what? I'm actually going to advocate for my sisters here and start exerting social pressure on fat ass fucking alpha males like you that I'm not, as a woman, I'm not going to take your fucking carrot. I'm actually going to make it so that you get nothing out of doing shit that you do. Yeah, by advocating for women sacrificing their potential benefit and sacrificing the possibility of potential harm for the systems that they inhabit. That might save Western civilization. That might save it. And that's what I'm going to do. That's what I'm going to continue to do. Women need to take responsibility. They need to start pulling up their fucking shorts. They need to start seeing the world in terms of what they can do for it. And yeah, maybe the end of Western civilization is looming over our head. But what does that matter? Ultimately, what matters is what we do to try and save it. Okay.
All right.
20 more seconds.
Why could it be dangerous if you don't identify the person?
If you name the person, you can find some other people who are exactly the same situation than yours. It helps victims to express themselves, which is really good because they need to speak out.
Thousands of women use the Balance Ton Pork hashtag. It's ruined men's careers and reputations.
Pausing for the banana. Of course it's ruined men's careers and reputations.
Oh god, it's ruined men's careers and reputations. A hashtag.
Well, that's definitely something to applaud. Media, yeah, let's just randomly remove men's careers and lives and their social connections. It's just no due process. Let's give women the right to do this to men, any man, anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And let's see how long our civilization lasts. I mean, seriously, this is like this is the froth on the waterfall. You know, we're clinging to a freaking log. This is the froth going over the fucking waterfall. The Me Too movement is the froth. And you know what's next? Anyway.
Okay, so we got some super chats. One from Pick, P-I-C-C, gives us $2 Canadian and says, that's a little collectivist / hyperbolic, isn't it? I don't know what that's in reference to. It could have been to your rant, Allison, but...
Who said it?
Pick, P-I-C-C.
Collectivist and hyperbolic. Well, could you not use the thought terminating cliche? Essentially what you said is that's satanic. And what was the other thing?
Hyperbolic?
That's satanic and satiric, therefore wrong. Could you give me a little bit more to go on there? Because what you have given is nothing. You've essentially said two thought-terminating cliches and considered the point that I made to be moot. I think the issue of thinking is with you. You're going to have to go back through it and figure out exactly the problem you have with it.
Well, the issue is that he hasn't actually said what it is he's objecting to.
Not an argument. Yeah, exactly. Sorry, go ahead, Brian.
Okay. No, that's it. The Great Indoors, 1979, gives us €5 and says, I see similarities between the government nationalizing financial institutions in 2008 and 2009 and the call for saving Hollywood now, the greater good. So it's basically like when they bail out the banks, you know. And
well, but the problem is that, okay, and I'm probably gonna get some people mad at me, but when I look at the banks and those bailouts, a lot of the conditions that led to what happened were actually imposed by government through 2 federal laws, and the banks were not behaving the way banks do. The banks were behaving according to fiats from on high that led to a really unnatural form of behavior that would not have existed in a free market. So part of me is like, it's no wonder the government bailed out the banks, because the government didn't want to actually have anybody point to them and say, you're actually kind of responsible for what happened here. And I'm sure the banks would have done that if they hadn't gotten their bailouts. So, yeah.
Okay. Do you want to do another 20
well,
seconds?
what I'm saying is the institutions are not infallible, neither banks nor governments, and they often do things.
I think this might all be just like all of this that's happening might just be the eternal breathing of the human spirit.
Oh, it's like you're never like, this is the thing that drives me crazy about so many people that I've come into contact with, through what I do, is that, there is this desire, I think, on the part of people to find some kind of thing, some way of doing things that will solve everything, right? And that's just not going to happen. And this is, I think, why Jordan Peterson's work is so popular, is because he actually says, do these things, right? And things will probably be better, right? Not just for you, but for your family and for your community and for society as a whole. They will probably be better, but they will never be perfect. Suffering is an intrinsic part of life. And you will always be a bit of a mess, but doing your best in specific ways can make things better, and that's the best that we can really hope for. And I think that we need to get back to that kind of wisdom, rather than sort of utopian visions of Bernie Sanders is going to solve all America's problems, or Donald Trump is, for that matter, going to solve all of America's problems. No, like there is no one system that's going to make life perfect. Get over it. So.
You were speaking about Professor Peterson, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, there was something that he said that I appreciated, and I think I've talked about it too. There really isn't a solution. Like, this is a wicked problem. Well, what he said is a complicated problem. It's actually more than a complicated problem. It's a wicked problem. Human nature is a wicked problem. I'm surprised people don't recognize this. I mean, they can understand problem dynamics in the context of environmental science, or creating a program, or intervening in, I don't know, with poverty, but they can't understand that the entirety of human existence is sort of a complicated, not just complicated, but wicked problem. And there are no solutions for wicked problems. There's only improvements. So you can improve your habits, your personal habits, like Karen was saying. And you can improve, and through improving your personal habits, you can improve the world around you. And just incremental, bit by bit, you can make it better. This is really funny, because I think that's one of the reasons why I don't think Honey Badger Radio really gets as much traffic, is because we're not saying that you can believe a certain thing and make everybody believe that thing too, and that'll be the solution.
Or show up somewhere with a picket sign and a list of canned chants, that you can say, and everything will be solved.
Yeah,
right?
That's not what we're saying. We're talking about a set of habits, a set of ways of thinking about your relationship as a man to women, or your relationship to women men as a woman, and your relationship to men as a man, and your relationship to women as a women, and your relationship to non-binary gender individuals as a anyway, it can go a long way. I can end up talking about that for a while, but it's just about improving your habits, and improving your habits of thinking about yourself and others. There's no easy road, and there's no silver bullet. It's just getting up and trying to do the work to make the world a bit better, and starting with your own habitual thinking. And in this case, for example, just men making women more responsible by not allowing them to hide behind their victimhood. That's a habit that needs to be challenged, and we will eventually, if we get enough people to challenge it, we will see positive outcomes. We'll start to care about issues that men face, because people are advocating for them and they're not backing down, and men will see improvements in their own life. Sorry?
Let me just get this straight. You're saying that we should organise our societies along the lines of the lobsters?
Yes! Lobster power forever. That is exactly what he was saying.
Ha, gotcha.
That is so memeified.
Yeah.
Okay, shall we? Oh, there's a couple of super chats here. French Honey Badger gives us $2 and writes, "I, for one, approve of the state going bust." Well, I'm not for that, because if you burn a church down,
we know that, French.
The priests and nuns do not become atheists if you burn down the church. So this should be done a different way. French Honey Badger gives us another $5 and says the banks were pushed towards doing stupid shit by the state, but bailing them out was just as bad. Two wrongs don't make a right.
Agreed. But I think that the state wanted to conceal its role in what happened, and the best way to do that would have been essentially to pay off the banks and give them, and have a maybe an informal non-disclosure agreement as to the state's role in that whole thing. Yeah.
You know what's really funny? Lately, I've been looking back at a lot of the there's a feminist in our comments, but she's sort of coming with the same arguments that I was seeing like 5 years ago. And I'm like looking at this argument, it's almost like quaint. It's like a nostalgic feeling. It's like, wow, you were so 5 years ago.
What's the argument?
Oh no, it was just the usual men, completely unconflicted patriarchy argument. Just
oh God.
Yeah, I'm like,
who is this person? Is it Hexam or?
No, it wasn't Hexam. Hexam is long gone. I haven't even seen him for a while. But it was an individual who was just talking about how it's a horrible patriarchy. Like today is a horrible patriarchy that oppresses women, and they've never been worse off. And I'm like looking at this, and I'm like, I don't even want to engage with this.
Gloria Steinem said that. Gloria Steinem said that in an interview maybe 8-10 years ago, when she was asked if women were still oppressed, and she said, "Oh yeah, more oppressed than ever." Right now, they have to deal with balancing career and family, and they have to deal with childcare and work, and they have to, negotiate this kind of new dating situation where, there's sexual liberation and sometimes, and so the entire negotiation has changed between men and women in terms of sexuality and all of this. So basically she's saying because of the advances that feminism gained for women, women need feminism more than ever because they're more oppressed than ever by patriarchy. And it's like, what? I'm just like, I'm just blown away by this. I'm blown away by the fact that, and this is really the hypoagency thing. It really is the doing everything in your power to appear as if you are not empowered, because that is where your power lies.
All right, should we get a few more seconds in?
Yeah, I got another super chat though. Observing Libertarian gives us $10 and writes, "Enforce the rule of law with no special privileges, no special exemptions, no special protections. When you allow a double standard, that gap will be expanded by those who gain the benefit." Thank you for that.
Well, yeah, of course. But, saying it and doing it is...
It starts...
Those are two totally different things, right?
Yeah.
It starts with personal habits.
Shall we play 20 more seconds?
Yes.
Okay, let's do it.
Including prominent academic Tariq Ramadan, who was accused of rape and charged last week. The man Mueller accused of harassment, Eric Brion, admitted that the inappropriate exchange happened at a media industry party. But he says they never worked together, and he's no Harvey Weinstein. Brion is now suing Mueller for public defamation.
Just pausing for the banana.
Okay, well that's interesting. Like I'm just gonna, because they actually
Vice actually is disclosing that. That's very strange.
they're probably going to say that this makes him even worse.
Yeah, I was gonna
Oh
say,
yeah,
they're
totally,
gonna twist
totally.
it.
He's a horrible, horrible person.
Let's find out.
But that's how female victimhood works. No matter what you do as a man, as soon as a woman throws the first punch, you're wrong.
Exactly.
His lawyers said in a statement that Muller had denounced Brion arbitrarily and presented the facts in a misleading manner. Sandra's lawyer says sexual harassment is poorly understood in France.
So why has he got a defamation case?
Il reconnaît les faits, mais il dit on ne peut pas me dire que je suis un harceleur sur le plan sexuel.
Okay.
What?
So the reason why he's got a defamation case is because the law hasn't changed. Isn't that the law everywhere, that you actually have to be harassed at work or in some sort of work context?
Well, I don't know. Like, sexual harassment is generally something that's taken that is dealt with through policy at work, not through the courts. So,
oh yeah, this is because he's suing her for defamation because she alleged it was sexual harassment, which I guess definitionally is supposed to take place at work. Whereas this didn't exactly take place at work; it took place in a convention, at a cocktail party at a convention.
Yeah, it's like essentially the difference between being a waitress or a waiter, maybe a waiter in a kilt, who has female customers reaching up his kilt, right? And that would fall under the definition of sexual harassment in the workplace, whereas this is the equivalent of two colleagues meeting at a party, and not colleagues in terms of working at the same place, but two lawyers or two accountants, or two people attending a conference, meeting at a social event, and one of them making a pass. So, yeah.
Under this law, if a woman accuses her subordinate of making a proposition, a sexual proposition, or even just a romantic proposition, I'm guessing that she could also accuse him of sexual harassment because it's in a workplace environment. Or do they consider the relative power?
Well, I won't say under this law, because the only law that's at issue here is the defamation law, because I don't know that sexual harassment in France even really is I don't think there's legislation around it or a statute around it. I think it's mostly policy. So,
all right. So essentially, the angle that Vice is playing is that the entire, and you can tell from the music as well, because they're lying with the music here. It's just suddenly changed to be sinister. So they're basically saying the entire institution, because the French legal system apparently doesn't consider a cocktail party at a convention to be a workplace scenario, that the entire institution is against women who are trying to get sexual harassment in the workplace.
I don't fucking know. I mean, like, the whole thing, like, it is defamation in the sense that she made the allegations publicly. She accused him of a specific thing that has a specific definition, and that his behavior does not fit the definition.
Yeah, well, I mean, he had no power over her, although she said that he's a producer. Well, okay, let's continue. Let's see what else Vice is doing here.
Parce que j'ai pas commis de harcèlement au travail.
The burden of proof is now on Muller to show Brion made his comments to her in a professional context. If she can, she might be protected by France's existing workplace anti-sexual harassment laws.
Is this a precedent-setting case?
Oui, parce que il va permettre de déterminer.
Just pausing for the banana.
So we would be precedent-setting case in that they would be defining cocktail parties at a convention to be a workplace.
Right. So if there's like a Christmas party,
this is
and you
creeping.
go somewhere else.
It's really encroaching on people's social lives and their ability to.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because you realize the result of this will be workplace edicts that you get fired if you approach anyone sexually at an event like this.
Or if you date within the workplace, yeah.
So the response to this is going to be to tighten rules regarding to the fraternization of individuals in the workplace. That's
Yeah,
what the
no,
response is going to be.
It'll be like it is in the military now, right? Which is there's no permissible form of fraternization, in terms of, you know, having sex with your fellow soldiers, or with between a superior and a subordinate, or anything, or any kind of sexual relationship whatsoever. That if you cheat on your wife as a soldier, you can be prosecuted. Like all of these things, they're gonna go into people's personal social interactions rather than their workplace ones, the way they do in the military. So,
yep. So what Sandra Mueller is going to bring about is workplaces are going to protect themselves by simply saying that men and women cannot, their interactions with each other have to be strictly monitored, and cannot deviate from certain scripts. So essentially what's going to result from this is increasing draconian corporate control over our behavior. I wonder if that was the ultimate that was the end goal. So is Sandra Mueller well connected? Is she potential corporate mouthpiece?
no idea. But I do think that, you know, like when you look at, I'm going to bring up Jordan Peterson again, and we actually rantzerked. Did we rantzerk last week?
Yes.
That, you know, where he said, you know, why would you wear lipstick? Yeah, no, it's because your lips darken when you're sexually aroused. And why would you wear rouge? Well, it's because same thing, your cheeks get red when you're sexually aroused. And, you know, I'm not saying women shouldn't be able to do that, but they should at least be willing to admit that that's what they're doing. They're sexualizing themselves in the workplace. So, are we going to is there going to be some kind of rule that all women in the workplace must dress and groom themselves the way Judith Butler does?
Yeah.
No, of course not, because women should be allowed to wear an abbreviated latex dress and stripper heels to the office, right? And not have any man comment on it, let alone look at them.
This is untenable, and this is scope creep, and it's allowing the government more oversight over our behavior. Like,
yeah,
is it not enough that you can charge a man with sexual assault if you can prove, or sexual harassment if you can prove he had some ability to affect your career, or he was your boss?
Yeah, so if Steven Crowder hit on me while he was, and he has kind of flirted with me a little bit. I don't think he's interested in me sexually, but he's made some comments about, you know, certain things like the size of my chest and stuff like that. Okay, so because of that, and because me being interviewed on his channel by him or on his show affects my ability to do what I do and have the career that I have, he has some ability to impact that. He's not allowed to make a comment on my appearance now. He's not allowed to, you know, be jokey with me about the fact that I have big boobs. It's not allowed because he has the ability to impact my career.
Yeah.
By
and so his whole show
should
burn in a fire. Burn down his YouTube channel.
This whole thing is just it's just getting really, really, really fucking bad.
Yeah. Like I said, the froth on the waterfall.
We're on the lip, right? The lip of the waterfall, about to go over. I'm gonna kill my dog.
Okay,
Give me a moment.
This $200 has not even gotten halfway through.
Yeah, that's the nature of super chats.
Yeah, I feel judged by it if we don't go the full length.
You should.
20
more seconds.
Well, I'm gonna. Yeah, 20 more seconds.
Let's do it.
Comment le juge comprend la réalité des différents milieux professionnels qui existent en France, ou s'il reste dans une lecture qui pourrait être très fermée.
What will it mean if Sandra loses her case?
Ça serait catastrophique, en réalité, pour les autres victimes de harcèlement sexuel.
Why would it be catastrophic for other victims if the scope creep is?
Yeah, no, you're looking to stretch the law to encompass something that it was not intended to encompass through a precedent, and then you're saying the other women who would be able to bring this law to bear will be catastrophically negatively affected by the fact that they can't use the law in a way that they aren't actually looking to use it for anyway, because one would assume that their complaints actually fit the definitions within the law.
Yeah, but okay, so using this guy's logic, if there wasn't a law in the books in France where the minute a woman alleged sexual assault or sexual harassment, the man wasn't dragged at his house and executed on the spot, like that would also be catastrophic to accusers. Like, at what point do we stop this madness and say, yeah, there has to be some clear definitions of what workplace harassment is, and that doesn't comprise two people who have no workplace relationship meeting at a cocktail bar during a convention. That doesn't there's a
no, and it's
a line there.
No, and it's essentially what he's saying is it will be catastrophic for any woman who is annoyed at a man for whatever reason, that she won't be able to actually get him destroyed just by, virtue of the fact that he annoyed her. And this is really the thing. It's, and one of the things too is if you actually want to be a tyrant, if you actually want to be tyrannical, it's in your best interests to make the rules as murky as possible and the penalties for breaking them as punitive as you can, so that you can essentially, you are the one who dictates whether somebody is going to be allowed to survive or be destroyed based on not on what is written down as a set of rules that will let people know whether they're on the proper side of things or whether they're behaving improperly. No, you don't want them to know that. In order to have real power over them, you need to have them be completely in the dark as to what behaviors are improper and what behaviors are fine, and then have the authority to inflict punishment just based on your whim. That is the definition of tyranny. That is the definition of, what you would see a dictator doing. I'm going to put you in prison. I don't even need to name what law you broke. I don't even need to charge you with a crime, let alone allow you to speak to a lawyer, read you your rights, anything like that. You did something that annoyed me, and therefore now you're in the gulag.
Didn't we
have... And that's what this guy is saying. This woman's lawyer is saying, so long as this is not the situation for men, women will be catastrophically affected.
Well, they're going to be catastrophically affected no matter what. But didn't we already have breach of promise laws, and didn't we already have social codes that severely affected men if they violated them? Like,
but those social codes that severely affected men if they violated them required women to uphold their end of the bargain. So you couldn't, there was a rule. You never hit a lady, right? But not all women are ladies.
Okay.
Right?
I'm
there
just
were
saying
rules. women, yeah, there were rules in the past that governed male behavior and governed the interactions between men and women, but women had an end of the bargain that they were expected to uphold in order to qualify for that treatment.
Not with breach of promise laws. But it seems like we're going back to that sort of. Yeah, let's continue. Let's do
Victorian. It's Victorian.
Except it's even worse. It's even more abdicating of women's actual abilities. Okay, another 20 seconds,
All right.
Brian.
Okay. Well, I got a quick super chat. John Taylor gives us £10 and writes, if this feminist-driven control over sexual advances and behaviors goes all the way, Western society could become more sexually and socially constrained than Sharia law. Okay, now I'm going to play another 20 seconds.
French women have been protesting en masse since October, demanding that their president, Emmanuel Macron, deliver on his promise to address sexual harassment, violence, and equal pay.
Pause it. Okay. All right. Well, definitely.
And equal pay.
The whole world needs to make everything comfortable for women.
Yes.
But not every woman, not the women who are okay with the slight risk and the ability to, if a boss, if some male boss that I have pulls the shit that a female boss that my husband had years and years ago, in which she attempted to ply him with alcohol and brought all of her friends, and she was 20 years older than him, and did and one of her friends did a lap dance and was so aroused she was wetting his trousers, and he was just disgusted by this entire thing. If a male boss ever did that to me, because none ever has, but if they did, then I could actually have redress. I could actually go to the courts or the system in Canada, actually get some redress for any kind of workplace harassment that actually happened to me. That's not good enough. No, we need to clog the system. This is the other thing. Situations of workplace, they're creating such a wide net that the system won't be able to handle every accusation.
No, but that's the whole point. That's the whole point, Allison. The system can't handle it. That's why Twitter can. And as long as you've destroyed a man, completely destroyed his social identity, destroyed his ability to earn a living, destroyed his career, destroyed his reputation in the eyes of everyone, right? It's just like those lynch mobs that were like, we're saving the court a job, we're saving them the time and effort that would be wasted on this whole thing because we're stringing up this black guy, right? That's really what this is, right? So the system's not going to get clogged because they're trying to bypass the system.
And nobody sees this is like the world-ending event. You bypass the system, you destroy the system, you terrify men out of actually upholding the system, and you no longer have the system to rely upon. But I guess this requires a form of thinking that maybe is beyond certain groups of people. All right, let's continue. Maybe that's why they shouldn't be given the vote.
Maybe. Okay, here we go.
Parce que moi, j'ai le sentiment que ça fait des générations que les femmes essayent de parler de ce sujet et qu'on ne les écoute pas.
The woman in charge of changing things is Gender Minister Marlene Schiappa.
Give me a fucking break. Give me a fucking break. We have never listened to women about sexual assault. We have never considered women to be vulnerable to sexual assault. Never, ever, 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 ever in the history of patriarchy have women ever been listened to when they said they were raped. Ever, 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 ever in countries where rape has been punishable by hanging, when it was the last non-lethal crime that a person could commit that could get them the death penalty, that was defined as something only a man could commit against only a woman.
And then there are
We
the
just
other things.
will not accept the reality that women can be victims of male sexual violence.
Holy shit. Okay, well, at least here are some statistics. In Victorian England, in the courts in Victorian England, a woman who accused a man of sexual assault had the same conviction rate as a woman today of getting a, so essentially if he was arrested, she had the same conviction rate as women today. I'm not using the population surveys where women admit to whatever amount of rape, and then you compare that by the number that actually confess it to the cops, and then you derive that to create the conviction rate. Bullshit. That's all bullshit. That's all victim mongering, fear mongering bullshit. I'm talking about the actual conviction rate that we use with other violent crimes, in which rape has almost an identical, or at least within the same range. Ballpark is in the ballpark of any other violent crime. Convictions for rape are in the ballpark for any other violent crime, and that's in an age when we have all kinds of shall we say forensics to judge whether or not a rape occurred. You go back 200 years, 40% of cases of rape were found guilty. Exactly the same rate as that is today. They did not have the forensic evidence they did have today, so they probably had to rely a hell of a lot more on the woman's testimony than they can today. That's actually, but I'm actually going to qualify that. 40%, same conviction rate as we have today. I'm going to qualify that. I'm going to qualify it. That was for a woman of a lower class accusing any man. So the conviction rate was identical with today with all of our forensic science for a lower class woman accusing any man in society of rape 200 years ago. The conviction rate for an upper class woman, like the individual in question here who's saying that we never cared about rape, this woman with her very attractive outfit, her well-done hair and makeup, this higher class woman, if she accused a man of rape 200 years ago, would have an 85% chance of that guy being hung on her word. 80. So she's saying in the past, we accepted rapists more. No, or we accepted the alleged men who had allegedly raped. We protected them against their accusers. Bullshit. 85%. This woman, if you were a man and this woman pointed a finger at you 200 years ago and accused you of rape, you would have a 15% chance of surviving. 15%. If you survived almost drowning in your own shit in the trench, then she pointed the finger at you, you'd have a 15% chance of not getting hung. This is hanged. This is a profound lie about history.
Oh, it's absolutely ridiculous. And you know, and one of the things that really drives me crazy too about history is there's a the word rape or rapine or rapine, I guess, depending on how you pronounce it, right? That is the root, the etymological root of the word rape, and that means to carry off something that doesn't belong to you. And it was applied to various things like the rape of the earth, right? Like if you went in and like burned a farm and like stole stuff and or defiled an environment or whatever, right? That was considered to be rape, right? And in ancient Rome, rape was a specific kind of crime, and it was essentially taking something that doesn't belong to you, right? So that meant any man who had sex with a woman who was of virtuous character, who was not his wife. Okay? That's all it was. Didn't matter whether she wanted it, didn't matter whether she initiated it, didn't matter any of that, right? He had sex with someone that he had no right to have sex with. That was considered to be rape. And the actual act that we consider to be rape, which is sex against a woman's will, had a different name. It was stuprum, I believe. Okay.
Okay.
That was completely different. That was the taking the carnal knowledge of a woman forcibly and against her will. That was what that was called, right? And then we had this conflation, and this is something that's mentioned in the Bible: when a woman is raped, when a man comes across a woman of virginal character and good and good standing in the community, and he lies down with her, he's guilty of rape, and he must marry her, and he owes her father compensation, blah blah blah, right? And that is the word rape in that context is not necessarily referring to the aggressive, forcible sexual violation of a woman against her will. It is just simply a man having sex where he's not allowed by society to have sex. So that could include an instance where a woman initiates sex with a man and gets caught by her dad, right? And then it's like shotgun wedding time and all of that, right?
I don't think I'm going to make 3 minutes. I don't think I'm going to make the end of this. I'm already in an incredible amount of pain.
All right, but what I'm saying is when you look at what's going on now in India, with half of all rape accusations being brought by women who had voluntary consensual sex with men that they were not married to, and now want to coerce marriage out of those men. And you're looking, and then, oh my goodness, the vast majority of these particular cases are resolved by the marriage of the two parties. And in 10 years, you're going to have Indian feminists saying, just 10 years ago in India, women were forced to marry their rapists, their horrible, violent rapists. I mean, like, this is where we're at, right? This is where we're at, that we somehow think that an entire system that essentially says a man who puts his foot wrong in any given way sexually, whether it's a violation of a woman and her will and her consent, or whether it's a violation of, whether it's him succumbing to her advances when her father wanted to marry her to some wealthier guy, okay? He's guilty of rape, and we're saying we've never respected women's sexual integrity, ever.
Here's the simple thing. If you were part of a tribal society, you might allow the local traveling judge to adjudicate over an issue of consensual sex with your daughter. You're not going to fucking allow a traveling tribal judge to adjudicate over an issue where your daughter was forcibly raped by the neighborhood tribesmen. You're going to go to war against them. So the only thing that was written into our law was those things, those sexual acts between men and women that their tribes would allow to be adjudicated over by a traveling judge. If their daughter was definitely raped, that would have probably caused several generations of intertribal warfare. Okay? So this is not the same thing. Now, before my fucking spine explodes in some bloody mess and I fall over like a puppet with its strings cuts, let's get another fucking 20 seconds in.
No, not another 20 seconds.
Why
We're
not?
into the third hour, aren't we? Half an hour in.
Oh,
Just
please.
about. Just do 20 more and call it.
Yeah.
But that fucking $200 stares at me. Says you're responsible.
Okay,
Allison.
Just sitting there.
Okay, you're not responsible for that gentleman's decision to send us $200.
You know what you could do is you could just make it up by making the next Rantzerker a bit longer. If you really can't take it.
That would require my cooperation, and I don't grant it.
Okay, let's just do another 20 seconds and see where I'm at then.
All right.
Yappa, a 34-year-old feminist author and the poster child for Macron's social revolution. Schiappa's debuting a law that will create up to $900 fines for catcallers and a dedicated police task force 10,000 officers strong.
Le harcèlement de rue, c'est un phénomène qui pourrait...
Oh my God.
Jesus fucking Christ. Is this what we're supposed to be proud of as women? I've created another way of presenting women as victims, and a new task force to protect women from words on the street.
Well, instead of women wearing a burqa, right, which would actually require them to adjust their behavior and their presentation and their way of interacting with the world to get the things that they want, which I guess is freedom from catcalling. Okay, what they're demanding is that men wear burqas on their eyes, men wear burqas across their mouths, men have no right to look at them or comment on their appearance. So a woman can literally walk down the street naked and a man has no right to have an opinion on that. He's not even allowed to fucking jerk off later.
I thought we in the 60s everybody was like free love, man. Like,
oh my god.
No,
No, but
back.
Women can't. But women cannot, like, this is the thing. Everybody in the 60s was like free love. Yeah, oh yeah, it was great, right? Women can't handle the consequences of that, because the consequences of free love is that love is free, sex is free, right? Women cannot charge for it anymore. Women cannot dictate the terms of the contract anymore. Women are not allowed to wield their sexual market value over men in order to get the things that they want, and therefore they're starting to realize that, on the whole, this is actually a shitty deal for women. But we're so used to being able to wear whatever the fuck we want and walk around with our tits hanging out, and we really don't want to give that up, because that's something that was a good thing, that was a thing that we like about it. So we're just going to impose authoritarian regulation on the behavior of everybody but women.
Okay, I think that ultimately it's not necessarily that they want to be able to do that, it's that they want to be able to be a victim of something. They can't perceive doing anything if they're not first a victim of something. This is the mentality that we're up against. Another 20 seconds, Brian, because I'm a victim of my fucking back.
Le harcèlement de rue, c'est un phénomène qui, pour l'instant, n'est pas inscrit dans la loi, donc il n'est pas défini. Donc pour nous, l'enjeu, c'est de savoir à partir de quand c'est du harcèlement, où ça commence, où ça s'arrête, etc. Et ensuite, comment on le sanctionne réellement.
But what we're talking about here is cultural change. How hard is it going to be?
Pause it. Yes. Penalize it. That is the ultimate goal. Increase the criminal state. Get more money to the government. Jesus.
Oh no, it's
so fucking
even
transparent. No, but seriously, Karen, of course the government is supporting this. It's $900 fines. It's like
the government is supporting it because of that. The reason these women are pushing for it is, I think it's histrionic personality disorder, writ large, politically.
Yeah,
that's what I think it is, right? And so these women, they're the ones who are pushing for this, and the government is saying, yeah, we can do that, like, because it's just like in Edmonton, Don Iveson is like, oh, okay, so every single school and including high schools and junior high schools and all of that, we need to have these 30-kilometer-an-hour freaking school and playground zones, and not just between school hours, not just from 8:30 a.m. anymore to 4 p.m., but from 7 in the morning till 9:30 at night. Yeah, no, and that's 30 kilometers an hour, and if you don't comply, you're going to get a photo radar ticket, and that's going to bring in so much fucking money. Oh my God. And it's not going to backfire, because it would backfire if you lost demerits, if you got demerits on your license from a photo radar ticket, but they can't do that. Oh my goodness, they can't do that because they can't tell who's driving the car by taking a snapshot of the license plate, right? But if they issued too many actual tickets that involved actual cops pulling over actual people, right, then people would lose their licenses constantly, and then there would be fewer drivers, and it would be a self-correcting thing. But with this thing, right, Nobody's going to lose their license. They don't even learn that they freaking violated the law and got a ticket until 2 weeks later. Maybe they sped another 20 times through that fucking new school zone during the interim, and they're going to get 20 more tickets.
Who the fuck is funding these people? Who the fuck is funding these people? Is it the government itself? Probably.
I don't know. Well, it is
cash grab.
It
cash
is like
grab.
Massive, justification for like pulling in money for people doing things that don't quite break the law, but they might break the bylaws.
And it's a gender-based cash grab too. It's because you can do it because it's never going to affect a woman. Even if she does, even if they're roving gangs of women catcalling men in Paris, it's never going to affect them because it's never going to be charged. All right, let's do another 20 seconds, Brian. I feel like my spine is going to explode.
And how feasible is it to change the culture?
Le plus difficile, c'est effectivement ce combat culturel. On le voit sur l'égalité professionnelle. Des lois en France qui interdisent de moins payer les femmes que les hommes, il y en a une dizaine et elles existent depuis les années 80. Et pourtant, elles ne sont pas appliquées. Donc notre changement, notre combat, c'est vraiment...
Okay, wait, pause. Okay, so her statement here, for those of you who aren't actually able to read, they're just listening to this French, is that the wage gap, and I completely forgot about that and I apologize. The wage gap has been illegal in France since the early 1980s, but yet it still continues. Maybe because what you've made illegal isn't why there's a wage gap. You've made it illegal to discriminate against women in wages. And you haven't erased the wage gap because maybe the reason why the wage gap exists isn't because of discrimination, which you made illegal. But
she says that the laws aren't being applied, but that's completely bogus. The laws are applied when women bring suits, right? And so you need women to bring suits before the law can be applied, right? Like, this is the thing with the law, right? I can jaywalk all the fuck I want, right? Oh, the laws against jaywalking aren't being applied. Well, they're only being applied when I'm caught by a cop and issued a ticket.
Right, and they won't come. They're not gonna make a suit because there's a pretty high chance that they're being paid fairly. They're not working as many hours. They're whatever, you know. So.
Okay,
there's
cultural.
It's cultural, yeah, because we don't value preschool teachers to the same degree that we value underwater welders financially.
The battle is cultural, so could the possibility be that we do not teach girls the necessary skills, like wanting to sacrifice themselves for the institution? Like, this is the fucking thing. We just talked about that before. How what Karen was bringing up, the individual Barbara Walters, was it, who said, who basically looked at Corey Feldman in the eye and said, because he was bringing up the issue of sexual abuse of men and boys in Hollywood, and basically said, but you are destroying an institution. She puts the fighting the sexual abuse of men and boys less than maintaining an institution that she appreciates. If women want to go out into the world and earn the same as men, they have to be as loyal and willing to sacrifice for the institutions they occupy. They have to be in a world where a Bob Walters will look them in the eye and say, me too. What the fuck are you talking about, lady? The institution is more important than preventing your sexual assaults. The institution of Hollywood is more important than preventing you from being sexually assaulted. That's the world that they have to occupy. It's the world that Corey Feldman occupied when Barbara Walter looked at him and said, the institution of Hollywood is more important than ending your sexual assault, Corey Feldman. Why are you even bringing this up? Why are you bringing this up? And if women want to earn the same, they have to be as sacrificed, and as their benefit has to be far less than the benefit of the institutions they occupy. They have to exist in a world where the instant they brought Me Too up, they would have been told exactly the same thing that Corey Feldman was told. Why is your sexual violation more important than preserving the institution? Why is that more important? Why? And then if they occupy that world, they will earn as much as men, because how much they earn is directly proportional to the benefit they give the institutions they are part of. And if they are not willing to sacrifice their own benefit for those institutions, they are not going to earn the same as men who are not only willing to sacrifice their own benefit for the institutions that they serve, but are expected to. They're expected to go in front of the Barbara Walters of the world, say, well, I was raped by I was raped by people who were protected by these institutions. And the Barbara Walters of the world are supposed to look them smack dab in the eye and say, you're a man. Why do you think your violent, horrific sexual violation is worth anything? Is worth the possible
even discussing,
worth discussing. Why do you think it's even worth questioning Hollywood about your sexual violation, Corey Feldman? Why is that? Why do you even have the right to bring it up? Hollywood as an institution is far more important than all of the boys and men it violates sexually. That's the world that women have to occupy. And if they don't, what is really created is a situation where they put their benefit above the benefit of the institutions that they are a part of and get the same pay as the group of people who will be sacrificed to uphold those institutions. That is the most profound form of inequality. That's sort of annoying. Okay, what is this? Some sort of like operant conditioning? You're trying to get us to not rant?
No.
Actually, he's just punctuating your rant.
Yeah.
I'm just
punctuating it.
Let's do another 20 seconds.
Okay. Oh God, why? Just okay, in 15 minutes I am done. No after show, no nothing. I have to take my daughter to the doctor, so.
Okay, let's do it. 20 seconds.
Un combat culturel. Et c'est le nombre qui fait la force.
Strength lies in numbers.
But not everyone's on board. In January, famed actress Catherine Deneuve co-wrote a scathing op-ed published in France's biggest newspaper and accused Balance Ton Porc of helping the enemies of sexual freedom.
Okay, actually go back a little bit so I can read that, Brian.
Yeah. There. Do you see it? Or do I have to play?
No.
For free. To play that?
Well, actually, okay, the fever to send pigs to the slaughterhouse helps the enemies of sexual freedom, religious extremists, and the worst sort of reactionaries. Anti-balance Ton Porc letter, Le Monde. Okay, and of course, this person probably was crucified for this comment. All right, let's do another 20 seconds.
All right.
Freedom. 100 other prominent women also endorsed the letter, including conservative magazine editor and self-proclaimed feminist Elizabeth Levy.
Do you see Balance Ton Porc as feminism?
Ah non. Non, non. Je vois ça comme un phénomène effectivement d'hystérie collective.
Pausing for the banana.
So she says that the interviewer says, do you see it as feminism? And she says, no, I see it as collective hysteria. It's a call to squeal on people. So she's essentially saying it's McCarthyism.
Wow, this is not only is this the one woman who's had made any sense this entire video, I noticed she's not really wearing makeup.
Yeah, I know. I mean, like, she has long hair and she has earrings and she's dressed femininely, but she's not like sexualizing herself per se. She's just presenting as feminine. Yeah.
Yeah, but the other women in this video were just caked with it.
Oh yeah,
except for the marchers.
Yeah. But I mean, like, this is so much the thing is that you have women who want to be sexual but not be sexualized, and like it's like I think that there is an urge in some women to dictate the entire sexual contract, which means that they want to present as sexual but be able to pick and choose. They want to put out a broad signal, right? But be able to pick and choose who actually responds to that. So, yeah.
Another 20 seconds, Brian. Let's see what else she has to say.
Je vois ça comme un appel à la délation. Je vois ça comme un renoncement à toutes les règles de la justice. Comment
pause
peut-on
for a
faire
second.
croire?
She says it's an opportunity to squeal on people. I see it as rejecting the rule of law. How can we obtain justice? Yeah, I see it as rejecting the rule of law too. And once we reject the rule of law, we're back in a more primitivistic system. And the other thing is that our system is so freaking complicated that we don't want to reject some of the we shouldn't be so eager to start chipping away at some of its foundations.
Well, it isn't necessarily foundations. I mean, like, it is foundations, but they're also, I mean, it really is an organic thing that's grown over time, over the last maybe 500 years. It's grown since Runnymede, since the Magna Carta. It's organically grown into something that is actually approaching genuine justice. And what a lot of these women want is a complete dismantling and redesign. And anybody who is a mechanic will tell you never buy a car, never buy a Honda Civic the year that they do the complete factory floor redesign, because none of the bugs have been worked out. None of the fuck-ups that they made have been worked out. They haven't even been discovered yet. You're buying something that's completely untested. And what these people seem to want is just throw away the old system and bring in something different. And we'll design it, and it'll be designed to do a specific thing, and we can engineer it that way. And no, I don't think that it's going to be better than the system that we've arrived at through a legal and cultural evolution.
Based on your thought, you're talking about designing a system. What we're talking about is designing a system based on the opinions and beliefs of women who sacrificed other women to Harry Weinstein. So
no, not just that, not just the women who sacrificed other women, future women, to Harvey Weinstein, but also based on the opinions and feelings of women who believe that the rape of women has never been taken seriously up until, like, #MeToo. It's never been considered a thing that was worthy of punishment. So they're essentially asking, let us complete incompetent, delusional human beings engineer a better system.
Okay, I want to just shill the fundraiser, because we are taking donations, support towards our legal case against Calgary Expo and the Mary Sue. As you may know, Watson, I am suing the Calgary Expo and the Mary Sue because they allege that I broke our contract with the Calgary Expo when I attended the Calgary Comics and Entertainment Exposition in 2015. That I lied on their contract, even though their defense submitted a contract in which I was clearly stated that my company was Honey Badger Brigade and our company website was www.honeybadgerbrigade.com. And also because I allegedly harassed feminists at a panel called Women into Comics. And you can find the alleged harassment in a video of that name, or find the harassment in a video on our channel and determine for yourself if there was any harassment. And there was not. Any sensible person would understand that, because I requested permission to speak, was granted permission to speak. And when they wanted to move on to a different person in the audience who had a question, I also I basically, went silent. So at all times, the panelists were in control of the panel. So no possible harassment or disruption could have taken place at that time. Anyway, they kicked us out based on those allegations, and I am now suing them for breach of contract, and I'm suing the Mary Sue for injurious falsehood based on advertising lies, provable lies about myself. If you're interested in helping me fight back against an attempt to silence myself And the offending comment, incidentally, was we need to bring men into the picture in terms of men's vulnerabilities, because it not only helps men to start talking about their vulnerabilities, it also helps women to remove this idea that they are defined by being victims. That was the offending comment that I made at the Calgary Expo's Women into Comics panel that got me evicted from not just that expo, but every expo across that they controlled. And incidentally, that those expos are a huge part of your career if you are an artist, a comics artist. Anyway, so if you want to help us fight back against that kind of silencing, www.feedthebadger.com. We're going back in July 3rd, 4th, and 5th, because the judge very graciously decided to come in on his time off so that we could have the trial a hell of a lot earlier than the Alberta courts were going to arrange it, which was originally going to be sometime in February 2019. If we can't fund this lawsuit, then I will have to settle, because for logistical reasons, because we won't have the money to continue. So if you want an opportunity to actually fight back against individuals who are promoting these kinds of narratives and will not brook any dissent, so they are reducing women down to victims. No, in every conceivable circumstance, they are creating the strictest, most toxic gender role for women in all of human history, and doing the same for men, because they're blaming men for everything, reducing women down to how they're acted upon by men, and blaming men for everything. And somehow this is progressive. If you want to fight back against people like that, you want to have a chance, then www.feedthebadger.com. Thank you. I will de-shill now. Shall we do another 20 seconds?
One more, once more through the breach.
Obtenir la justice en abolissant toutes les règles, toutes. Ça s'appelle la justice populaire, le lynchage.
If we abolish all the rules, that's what you call mob justice. Lynching, pillaring. Why is this woman is so sensible? Why did she call herself a feminist?
Because she hasn't really looked into it, but I bet you if she did, she might change her mind.
Les au pilori, ça s'appelle pas la justice. Pour tout vous dire, ça me dégoûte, balance ton porc.
Do you think that the current moment could actually threaten to undermine French sexuality?
J'espère que non. Alors maintenant, si vous voulez, qu'est-ce qu'elles demandent, ces féministes? En permanence qu'on interdise quelque chose.
What do these feminists want? They always want to ban something. So she calls herself well, maybe she's like a completely apostate feminist who calls herself a feminist just to piss off other feminists.
Oh, yeah,
she's the French Camille
Paglia, yeah. Well, she's just said these feminists always want something. Exactly. And if you don't stop them, they will want something through every single institution you have, and you will be left with nothing. Nothing. They are the nothing. Okay.
So what do you think of Marlene Schiappa? I mean, she's talked about wanting to pass legislation to try and, what she thinks like course correct. What do you think of Schiappa?
Excusez-moi, elle est très sympathique, mais enfin, comment dire, personne ne la prend vraiment au sérieux.
She's very nice, but no one... Go ahead.
Marlene Schiappa, she's very nice, but no one takes her seriously.
Okay, continue.
Women on both sides have questioned how much power you really have. Is this all window dressing?
Donc moi j'ai l'impression que le pouvoir dont je dispose, il est important, mais bien sûr tous les soutiens sont bienvenus. Donc si elles veulent m'aider à obtenir plus de pouvoir en relayant davantage...
All right, so can we go back and just state what she had to say?
She said, of course the power I have is really important. And if people want to support me, here's how they can do it. Their support is welcome. So she's not saying, she's saying the power I have is important because it's power, not because she has any responsibility to use it in a way that doesn't harm others. So, dog!
Okay, let's continue.
M'aider à obtenir plus de pouvoir en relayant davantage ce que je fais, par exemple, c'est avec grand plaisir.
So she's saying, oh yeah, so if they want to help, they can share what I'm doing. So yeah, retweet me. and that's how you can can acknowledge the help me build my power, which is important.
And then they also says that's a very French way to say it will never work. What the fuck? Oh wait, we missed something. So if they want to help, they can share what I'm doing, for example.
I'll go back a little bit. She says I'd be very happy.
Avec grand plaisir. C'est très français, le ça marchera jamais.
Oh, I guess it's a mistranslation. Maybe it's saying it's a very French thing to say it'll never work. Right?
What the fuck is she on about?
Oh, no. She's saying it's very French to say that thing that you're doing will never work. And she's saying, yeah, no, I think it'll work.
Okay, good.
Right?
All right.
So I think I can actually orchestrate a lynch mob culture. Yeah.
Great. Go
is
you.
What she...
By the way, we're so close. We just have one last segment. So let's do it.
Yeah, we can just play. Well, not really, but play a little.
Just
bit
play
more.
till the obvious end. But
right.
Moi, je pense que ça peut marcher si on s'en donne les moyens et si on fait les choses correctement.
I feel like things will work if we can do it right. Okay, great. Yes, remove all due process. That's excellent. That's an excellent goal.
Yeah, no. Yeah, you can totally construct a society that throws men in prison for stuff without due process. If you do it right, you just have to, take a page from the Deep South during like the 19aughts and 1910s, right? That's fine.
Oh no. Anyway, this is over. I think everybody can conclude that we did our duty.
Yeah, 3 hours. Holy shit.
No, that red tag with the super chat can no longer judge me. Even though it's not complete, we did complete it. So it is complete. So there. I have lived up to my responsibility.
And I am going to take my poor daughter to the doctor.
I'm going to lie down.
And do my grocery shopping.
So we got through the whole video.
Oh my God, your back isn't even broken, Allison. My back is broken. I have two
but you're sitting down.
vertebrae.
You're sitting the fuck down. I can't even sit down because I'll get tension headache. All right, everyone, once again, we're doing the fundraiser. I really want to get the funds because I do not want these smarmy gits to get away with threatening me with defamation. Well, they'll get away with threatening me with defamation. And I don't know, calling them smarmy gits.
We don't want them to get away with actually launching a defamation case.
Yeah.
We actually want to hold their feet to the fire and say,
I don't want them
Are you kidding?
At this point, I don't want to fucking settle. Is that actionable for me to say that? I don't want to settle with a bunch of people who threaten me with shit.
Yeah, no, why would you? And that's not, there's nothing actionable there.
No, demolish
absolutely
them.
Nothing actionable there.
Okay, so I don't want to have to settle with people who threaten me with shit. So please do go to www.feedthebadger.com. I have actually put my money where my mouth is. I witnessed or experienced an injustice. I experienced being silenced, and I fought back. So there you go. I put my money where my mouth is. Please put your money where my mouth is. www.feedthebadger.com.
Do it!
Do it!
Well, I'm gonna close this out, but I want to read the rest of the super chats first. We won't respond to them, but I don't want to ignore them. So I'm just gonna read through them. John Taylor gives us I already read that one. Zeranks gives us $5 and says, for making a 3-hour Rantzerker that I missed. Well, thank you, Zeranks. And Observing Libertarian, wow, a few. $10, and $5. So this is a 3-parter. So $25 he says, the only power any government has is the power to crack down on criminals. Well, when there aren't enough criminals, one makes them. One declares so many things to be a crime that it becomes impossible for men to live without breaking laws. Ayn Rand, that was a quote by her. Then he writes, my article on Honey Badger Brigade's Orwell's nightmare coming to fruition predicted this French task force against street harassment 4 years ago. So Called it. And then French Honey Badger gives us $5 and says she thinks her critics are against her because she can't accomplish her thing rather than them saying that she shouldn't. That's in response to the French woman saying it's a French thing to say that you'll never make it. So that is it for the Super Chats. Thank you so much, guys, for your donations. Allison, do you have any final words before I push the button to stop?
I'm just gonna say those were good comments attached to those super chats. So
there was a lot of really great super chats.
Join us in the after chat if you're a patron. www.patreon.com/honeybadgerradio. And that's it.
I won't. I won't.
I know you won't. I know you won't. I know you've done your
right.
tour of duty. Okay.
All right.
Good night.
Yeah.
It's time to go. I'm starving.
Good night.